And up in Formartin and Buchan as well.
Yeah,
it was hotter. It was hotter yesterday. I noticed it. I mean, Rachel's in the garden today, and she said it was just absolutely baking. But when I was driving home last night, I drove home last night after 6, and the temperature in the car at one point hit, not far from Rotherham, hit 25 degrees. It didn't get above 21 tonight, so it was actually warmer last night. But I think today everybody coming into the shop was saying it was very hot.
I did a bit of work in the garden yesterday, and I was done with heat stroke. Yeah. my head. That's why I don't have my hat on today. My head is burnt.
Get the cream on there. Get the cream on.
Coming off, it just emanating. So I've done work for inside today. So
aloe vera.
Yeah. It's not even aloe vera. It's probably Tesco's own stuff. Good evening, Duncan. How are you?
Hi, Duncan.
Nice to hear from you. Hopefully, we'll hear what's in your glass tonight.
Hi, Phil.
Special, I hope. And Phil, good to see the regulars are in.
Yeah.
We've got a great tasting. Great tasting. It'd be great to have a tasting tonight, wouldn't it? A great Blether tonight. My God, it's the heat. It's getting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have absolutely no idea what's going to come out of my mouth tonight, so it could be entertaining.
She said it was just absolutely.
So how's your day been? Before we bring on Iain.
Yes, busy. busy. Chief cook and bottle washer. So yeah, it's great fun. I love doing what I'm doing, as you know. Anyway, so yeah, it was busy. It was fantastic. Some really nice guys in the shop today. Some good chat. So yeah, got home just in time and decided that I should pour myself a Fino, a sherry. There's a reason behind that, and I'm sure Iain will chat about sherry. But my sort of decision to drink more sherry and to get to know more sherry didn't come from Annie Manson, who is fantastic. It actually came from one of the first tastings I did that Iain was involved in, where he basically said we should be drinking more sherry, and I'm sure he'll talk about that tonight.
Yeah,
I've been drinking more and handling a few bottles. There was a few more arrived in the shop today, so there was a nice Amontillado arrived. I'll maybe take one of them home in another day if there's still left.
Well, now we know what's in your glass. I don't know. I'm probably going to start for my wee old particular Glencairn 16-year-old, 48.4%. That's going to be my starter dram.
I'm going to follow mine up with this though, just to kind of say this is Iain's batch, the 15. So top dram. So I'm going to follow up my Fino with one of those.
Nice. I think this bottle's going to be recycled.
That's not going to last. That's not going to last tonight.
But
I don't think that'll make it to 7:30.
I just think the great thing about the weather tonight is Glencairn, such a good summer's day dram that it's just going to. We couldn't have timed it any better. But we've got a few guys on now. Good evening, Darren. Remind before we bring Iain on, we need to speak to Darren about the WE.
Oh yes.
Get back to him, Darren. We're on it. It's been a manic week. I apologise for not getting back to you last week, but we will definitely get back to you soon. We've got 14 people on, so let's bring Iain on.
And
it works. I love it when it works first time.
I know.
Really.
That's show business.
Yeah. Good evening, Iain. Like I say, my brain is absolutely frazzled tonight. It's going to be. I think I'm just going to sit back and let Russell take on.
It's definitely.
No. I've been working all day.
It's definitely the weather as well. To be fair, this is unprecedentedly hot. I'm kind of melting here at the moment in my office. But, the good news is you can only see the top half. The bottom is completely
I'm not far off actually. Just when we're doing the warm up, I noticed how creased my shirt was. That's why the waistcoat's on. So this will probably come off once the creases have sweated out. We'll be all right.
Yeah, it could be one of these kind of weird leathers where everyone just slowly loses layers as it goes.
I don't know about you, but I think we're the wrong people for that kind of leather.
I was going to say it's probably not enjoyable for anyone watching. But...
We'll feel good.
Yeah.
But it's a pleasure to be on with you guys, and I say it's great to see you again. So when you mentioned about coming on, I was very delighted to come and have a chat with you guys. Very happy to have
It's just a shame that we've only met virtually. I know 3 or 4 times now, but soon, touch wood.
Definitely. No, I'll need to come and have a nosy. I love a good whiskey shop. I say I've kind of ogled your selection online, but I've never actually had a chance to visit the shop, which is unacceptable, really. So I'll need to get in there.
Really? By the time you come up, it'll say Russell's Whiskey Shop on the door. So don't go past it.
It's all Glencadam and sherry. It'll be amazing. Yeah,
I've not been visiting the shop at all. I've just been making the sign. That's all I've been doing.
I mean, we'll talk a lot about Glencadam tonight, for reasons that a lot of the guys will know who are watching. If you don't know, you'll find out in the lead up to 8 o'clock. But it is, it's relatively new for me, Glencadam. And a large part of that is then to also come in and say, no, you've got to try Glencadam. We've had it, but it was always kind of second fiddle to Tom and Towel, which has always been a great seller for us. And it's just a great go-to dram, unoffensive. You can't kind of go wrong with it. And a large part of our sales, a lot of people, especially walk-ins, are buying for somebody else, buying a present for somebody, and it just sits right in that market where, I don't know if he's going to like that. I don't know if he'll like it. And it's, trust me, they'll like Tom Mattel. No matter what kind of whiskey you enjoy, it sits in that bracket that it looks good. Pour it. It's not going to set the world alight, but it tastes good, and it's just there to enjoy. It's for us, it's absolutely perfect because we're not
the gentle dram tagline really helps, and that sells it. If it's somebody buying it for a gift, they're like, oh, that sounds nice. The gentle dram's a nice kind of gift kind of feeling. So
it's kind of like, it's an all-rounder, isn't it? It's one of these whiskies that it's not, if you want something kind of big cast strength peated that's going to blow your head off, doesn't really tick that box. But in terms of a kind of for me, it's a kind of crowd pleasing dram.
Absolutely.
And even from day one, it's funny. I mean, so even when I was working in whiskey sales rather than for Angus and Dundee, Tom and Tell 16 is a dram that you kind of pour people, and no one ever goes, ugh. Like, it's always like, And whether they're wanting something more formidable or whether they're wanting a dram to kind of introduce them to, it's a bit of a very likable whiskey is probably that.
And then you've got Glencadam, which is kind of Tom and Tell 2.0, isn't it? It's everything's just ramped up to your 46% and your natural colour, non-chill filter, and kind of one for the whiskey geeks. But again, it's on that kind of more approachable side, isn't it?
I think it's one of these whiskies that people kind of need to get to know it, because it's a kind of smaller name. And again, thinking of it from my retail days as well as nowadays, I think it's a dram that it's quite likable. It's kind of sweet, soft, fruity, maybe a bit more structure, a bit more spice than you get in a kind of standard Tom and Tell release. But it's just getting them to kind of latch onto it. Being natural coloured and 100% bourbon cask has always been a trial. I think nowadays people are kind of twigging onto it. But when I first started in Angus and Dundee, trying to sell a kind of lemon gold bottle, and people go, that's a bit pale. Nowadays, that's what we want. But even back then, they're like, what? I like my whiskies dark and sherried. I'm like, well, kind of,
we have that conversation. We have that conversation a lot, and always. For me, the one to get people to say, listen, try this is always Glencadam. And I love it. I loved it from the first moment I tried it. The 13 was the first one I tried. It was actually the Huntley shop. I was looking for a Tom and Tell. And the guy there said, have you tried the Glencadam? And I thought, oh, no, I haven't tried that. So I went away on holiday to Blether and I saw the 13. I thought, I'm just going to have that. And it was like, love at first sight. Just fantastic. And I've gone right through the range and I love everything actually there. So I was kind of bullied Mike to.
Normally I discourage bullying, but in this situation,
I mean, I'm glad he did because it's right up there with our top sellers. We've between the two distilleries, they're both great sellers. So, and the range is, as I say, you've got everything that you can want. You got sherry, you got bourbon, cognac, port, which is my second dram tonight. That's my previous
nice
single cast release, the 2006.
Yeah, my bottle of that's long gone, unfortunately.
Well, depending on how long we've Blether tonight, so it might.
But I say, genuinely, I know we're just having a Blether, but we are very appreciative of what you guys do for us. You guys are definitely big advocates of both of our whiskies, and we're very thankful for that. I think being a kind of a family company of the scale we're at, we appreciate people that kind of kind of chime the bell, and kind of we've got this really exciting single cast coming out with you guys for that as well. And Russell, thank you, because I mean, obviously you bringing that to Mike. I know you've always been a big fan of Glencadam, so again, I appreciate both of your support. But and I hope that we can actually cheer some good stuff in person. I've got a few interesting samples I'm sure I could bring up as a wee thanks to try with you at some point when we can come and actually visit the shop. So.
I just lost you for a second there. So I heard you say I know Russell, but so I don't know if you asked me a question there or not. I lost you.
No, I was just saying that I know that your influence was a big part in introducing and the guys at Inverurie, so I appreciate your kind of your loyalty to the brand as well.
Oh, no problem at all. It's an easy loyalty.
It's always very much appreciated. It's nice to know that kind of the stuff we're doing is being well received and getting enjoyed by our customers as well. That's the main thing. If people are buying bottles, then it means we're doing something right.
Absolutely.
Well, absolutely. And from a sort of work in the shop point of view, it's great to have a product that there's always that kind of 1% that you're kind of thinking, oh God, I hope they do like it. But you would almost stake your mortgage on the fact they're going to like it, and people are, and nobody ever comes back and says that was rank. Everybody says you gave me that the last time, I really liked it. Now what have we got that's something similar? And it's that's actually a harder thing to do.
Yeah, well, true.
Sometimes you go too high to start with.
But there's enough in the range for everyone, like to say. So, Darren's just put on there. Oh, and he's gone.
Oh, he's had enough. That's it.
I'll maybe have some pork pipe left after all.
He said some nice things. That's okay.
Yeah, Glencairn 15 was the first non-chill filtered natural colour whiskey you tried. Great introduction. Nice to go non-cask strength as well. So that's what Russell's on. Phil as well. You're on the Glencairn 15 tonight as well, which is we've got lots of Glencairn 15 advocating. He is, but we'll let him in. I think it was pretty rude of him just to bug it off like that.
Sorry, it's like, well, you like the brand, my job's done. See you. My internet cut out there. I'm really sorry about that.
No problem.
Ali's worried he didn't pay your bill. Poor Ali Milton, he's stuck out in the rigs just now, so he's watching with no drams.
Oh dear, I don't know.
We had the problem with Iain McAllister last week as well. His light started dimming. He had to go put a penny in the meter as well. Oh, it was Billy? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
To be fair, I've unashamedly, because I do so many virtual tastings at the moment, I bought one of these influencer ring light things. Because the light in this room is really bizarre, and either it kind of fades all of me out and just shows the background, or I'm like ultra white and kind of slightly superimposed. So I've got this ring light thing. But my neighbours must think I'm really up myself, because I'm really not into like self-broadcasting. I don't really do videos on my own, but I've got this kind of I mean, it was the cheapest one I could buy on Amazon, to be fair, but I've got this kind of influencer ring lighty thing. But so the lighting's fine. It's just my internet connections that's the problem, it turns out.
It's the most bizarre thing with these. The amount of times I've done a tasting or had a chat with the Blether and what have you, and Rachel, she's downstairs out in the garden, and she'll be going, what the hell are you doing up there? It's just, so you must, if you're sitting beside a window and your neighbours can see you, they must be going, what on earth is going on? He's just looking at a screen and he's got like this. And he's
I know, well, 100%. So there's only one window that our neighbour house looks into, and it's the one that looks into this office. I mean, neighbour's actually an ex-Scotland rugby player, really nice guy. But yeah, they must think I'm a total alcoholic, because literally, like, most nights I'm either sitting here with a ton of bottles or talking to myself on a camera.
1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Exactly. Whisky 1 in the afternoon.
It was Robert. Did Robert have like 2 back-to-back in Australia or something? He was telling me about. It's incredible. Yeah,
it's a funny one. So the early morning shifts, I've done a couple of staff trainings in Singapore, and I mean, some of these have been at like 3 in the morning. Not 7 in the morning, 3 o'clock their time. But I mean, it's kind of hard to rally yourself, as much as I love whiskey. Because like, you're tasting with us. I'm like, I can't really, because I kind of need to do stuff for the rest of the day. But yeah, I've not drunk like that since I was at uni. But
that's good. Ed, I'm not sure if we can do disclosures on the show. Ed's asking who the ex-rugby player is. It's next who's creeping in your window.
It's probably not really fair to say, but yeah.
Just make one up. Just make one up.
No, I'm not a fan yet, though. I'm working on him. But yeah.
What we'll do, Ed, is I'll find out where Iain lives, and I'll send you his address. You can go around and look in his window.
Yeah, that's right. There's
that's not creepy at all.
It depends if you want to be interested in rugby. I mean, there's a ton of whiskey on one side and then an ex-Scotland player on the other. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, which window do you break into?
Yeah.
They're not all like that from Huntly, by the way.
Yeah.
So, Iain, you must be one of the youngest master distillers, recently promoted or titled master blender. You must be one of the youngest in the circuit, are you?
Yeah, so I definitely, I know I'm one of them. I think the youngest is actually, I'm totally going to say, I know I'm wrong. There's a Julianne Fernandez from Distell. I think she's the youngest by a couple of years before me.
Okay. Yeah,
because I thought I might have been, and then I was speaking to Scott Grierson, who's now actually working for Brown Foreman, but I was speaking to him, and he's like, "Oh, actually, I think our master blender is younger than yours." But yes, I am one of the younger faces. And yeah, I'm working on the moustache, but I've not kind of got to Richard Patterson status yet. But no, it's a very kind of flattering thing. I think for me, kind of, I'm a massive whiskey geek. And always have been. All those books behind me are whiskey related, and my living room is where I keep all the explosive stuff. But it's yeah, I think that I've kind of admired and looked up to people like David Stewart, Richard Patterson, Jim McEwen, all these guys since I started getting into whiskey properly. And I think to be given that title, which is the same as theirs, albeit not comparable in that sense, is quite massive shoes to kind of stand in. And I know I'm quite good at what I do, but it's one of these things I'm also kind of aware that the word master kind of associates with really, really knowing your shit, if you excuse my French. And I do, but I think it's one of these things that I've still got that kind of, slight imposter syndrome in the basis that I'm like, I know that I'm obviously good enough that they've made me do it, but I feel that, the kind of, I'm standing in the shadows of the greats, and I will hope that I can only kind of, build up to be of that level at some point. But, time will tell.
Robert must be a big shoes to fill. He's been kind of Tom and Tell through and through. And Glencairn obviously as well.
Yeah, I mean, my job is kind of working closely with Robert, so I'm not replacing him by any means. He still looks after all the liquids. He still does a lot of the core releases as well for Tom and Tell. So he's our master distiller. And to be fair, without him, I wouldn't be where I am. So Robert is, he's pretty much, I hate to use the millennial words like mentor, but he's a pretty amazing guy to work with and work for.
He's your Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah, literally, he kind of, everything, a fourth generation master distiller is kind of, you can't really replace that. It replaces anything that's in that shelf.
So the impression I kind of got from when we had a tasting with Robert on the single cast not too long ago, was that he's kind of focused on the core range. And you're going to be experimenting more with the kind of single cast and picking casts with that. Is that right? Is that kind of the gist of it?
Yeah, very much so. So Robert still looks after the kind of the core releases in Tom and Tell. I kind of work with him for some of them, but he kind of oversees the kind of the core range, and I'm looking more at experimental casts. So anything that isn't just bourbon, I suppose, is kind of my remit. Okay. But at the same time, it's all kind of maintenance and kind of keeping an eye on releases and analysis as well. So a lot of my time is spent nosing casts and tasting notes, which is not, it's not a bad gig really. But it's, so a lot of my time is looking at kind of releases of maybe smaller batches and things like that. But I think the idea is kind of, I'll get more and more involved with Robert as well. COVID's been a bit of a difficult one because normally I'd be up at the distilleries working with him, but a lot of what I'm doing is kind of getting sent down to me, which means it all comes to my doorstep. It's even worse. Just literally arrive, get kind of 50 drams in the post in my pajamas.
I only get milk delivered here. I mean, that's there's something wrong going on there.
I'm sure Rachel would beg to differ, Russell.
But so very much working with Robert and also with Doug as well at Glencairn. And again, so these are guys I've known since. So I've been in Angus and Dundee for coming on 6 years now. So I've been working with them for a good while. But it's nice to. It's been a strange transition with the new title. Obviously, I've always kind of been involved in blending to a degree, but the new title has a little bit more gravitas, a bit more weight attached, and more responsibility as well. I think I feel like there's a new weight on my shoulders. Not to mess it up, but no, it's good fun.
But that's that kind of thing where you kind of need to take that step up. I mean, I used to, in my previous job in the NHS, I used to share a desk with a physiotherapist. She was a really, really lovely lady. And one of the things she always said to me was, you should always be reaching. You should always be reaching for your next sort of goal. You shouldn't be cruising. You should be you should be stretching. You should be thinking, can I do that? Am I good enough? Because that's what challenges you, and I guess that's the phase you're in just now, which sounds brilliant. Scary and so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it, and I think that I suppose with COVID and everything, it's kind of not taking the shine off things, because it's obviously I've still been very immersed in everything, but it's been really strange because so I've been blending with the company for probably about 4 years now, and then I kind of got a senior blending role about 2 years ago, it's kind of stepped up, and I got more responsibilities with it, and sourcing barrels and that sort of thing became part of my remit. And then, yeah, as of kind of the turn of the year, obviously the new title, and I said that's come with it even more responsibility, but it's kind of been stepping up that way, I suppose. And yeah, like you say, Russell, I mean, it's since I started getting into it, I was like, oh, I'm quite good at this, and I really enjoy it. So I'm going to shoot that direction. I maybe got to my destination a little bit quicker than I expected, to be honest. But I'm also kind of flattered as well that they've given me that opportunity. But yeah, it's good stuff. And again, I try to share that with people as well. When I'm doing my tastings, I think that kind of whiskey and the jobs available in whiskey. I mean, kind of you're a good testament to that, Russell. I mean, I know that you enjoyed whiskey before. Now you get to kind of work with it on a daily basis. And I loved working in retail as well. I really loved working on that side of the industry too. But it's a job that kind of we get privileged to do what we do, and we get to try some amazing stuff as part of it. And in my role, I get to try some ridiculous casks. But I tried to kind of share that a bit because it's kind of, I know lots of people who are friends and kind of colleagues, or even just customers and acquaintances that I've met along the way that really love whiskey. If I can kind of share snapshots of that, it's really kind of part of what I like to do. I love to kind of either explain things that I've learned that people haven't learned yet, or let them try some weird and wonderful stuff. It's all kind of part of the fun, really. And yeah, and like I said, when I actually get to see you guys in the shop, I'll bring some of that with me. But yeah, it's become very much part of the journey. And I suppose getting to where I'm at from a brand ambassador route rather than maybe a kind of chemist route, a bit of what I do and a bit of what I'm kind of working with is very much about, well, my interactions and my experiences through the line, rather than necessarily creating release because we wanted to buy this particular type of cask. It's like, well, I know what people like. I know the flavor styles people enjoy. I know what Tom and Tom Glencairn are capable of, and then kind of playing around in that kind of ballpark, I suppose. But yeah, but
sounds like great fun.
It's a good laugh.
Yeah, and I suppose that's only going to step up a level when we get back into visiting and being in the office, the blending room, the distillery.
Yeah, well, I say the strangest responsibility for me so far, the strangest moment I've had since the new role, was when we did Virtual Spirit of Speyside up in April, and I went up to Tomintoul, and we were filming in one of the warehouses. And I mean, I've been in these warehouses multiple times, but opening the doors to it, I had this kind of moment of like, wait a second, you're responsible for a lot of this now. Whereas before, it never really sunk home, and I was like, wow. So standing looking at kind of, however many thousands of casks, and I'm like, I'm going to make a mark on these. Which, not as in I'm going to pee on them, but I'm going to make a mark on these. That's
the other side of the master blender.
Yeah, I'm going to send it.
Mark all the casks. No, but it's been this kind of that was definitely the moment for me that I was like, oh, this is like quite a big thing now. Because again, I've not really been in contact with them, and I've not really seen the distilleries with everything that's going on with COVID. So yeah, it's good fun, and I'm looking forward to that continuing. But,
I think that's a bit we've really missed, isn't it? It's that smell of the distillery. It's the dunnage. It's all that kind of.
Yeah.
We did I've moved close to Glendronach. I used to stay in Inch, and I've kind of moved a bit further north. So my sister and brother-in-law, my brother-in-law and his fiance, were up here a couple of weeks ago, and I took them down for the 3-dram tasting. So you can't actually tour the distillery, but they say to you, you can wander about. There wasn't any kind of major restrictions to wandering about. And we basically just stuck our nose at the warehouse to smell it. We're sitting there just breathing it in for it. Oh my God, that's amazing.
It is genuinely kind of one of my favorite things about working in the industry is the smell of warehouses. I absolutely love them. At Coatbridge, where our head office is, so I've been going into Coatbridge probably about once a week to use the machinery that I can't have at the house, so that I can do some blending from home. When it comes to making up proper prototypes and doing things like proper alcohol checks, the machine that does that is worth 40 grand. It's not really something they let me have in my living room. But when I've been turning up, so where I park my car is outside a warehouse that holds 20,000 casks. So every morning, you don't need coffee. You just open the door and it's like, oh, it's such a good smell. It's just that kind of. So at Coatbridge site, we hold, I think it's just around 200,000 casks at the moment. But I mean, the aroma and the air there is great, and I don't get bored with it. I've been opening the door to that for many years now, and every time it's like, oh, this is such a good smell. I'm sure if I worked in like a fish factory or an abattoir,
maybe not so much.
No, I know that from actually. I remember when I was younger, I camped in Fraserburgh beside the beside the Young's Fish Factory, so I actually know what that smells like every morning. but yeah, the whiskey smell is one that doesn't really shrug off. I've never gotten used to it or kind of bored of it anyway. But.
So you camping in Fraserburgh, you must have been a bit of an adventurer when you were young then.
I mean, I don't know if you call Fraserburgh an adventure. I mean, it was.
I'm thinking that's a bit of an expedition to be fair.
Yeah, well, so originally my side of the family are from kind of Peterhead area, and I'd never actually been up to Fraserburgh. I didn't really know what to expect, and we had some time off, and I was just doing a bit of touring around in Scotland on the cheap. It was just at the end of uni, and I was like, let's go to Fraserburgh, and it was nice enough. I moved to Portsoy just after that because it was a slightly nicer campsite and less fishy, but it was all right. But yeah, so I'm originally from Carnoustie, but as my mum's side of the family is part from the East Nuke of Fife and part from Peterhead, Fraserburgh kind of area. So I was trying to do a bit of retracing the steps, but yeah, I used to be quite fond of the old tents. Nowadays, I travel so much with work that I've gotten a bit used to staying in nicer hotels. But it's one of these things that. But I'm never against an old festival or something like that.
That would be quite a niche, wouldn't it? The master blender, sort of the camping master blender.
To be fair, I mean, so Tomintoul Distillery has a brilliant big flat bit of ground outside the front, and I've toyed with the idea of it before when I'm up there. I mean, and they have showers and stuff there for the guys that work in the distillery, but I think the problem is if it had like loads of little kind of big yellow patches on it where I've been camping in the tent. I'm not like the lightest human in the world either, so I don't want it to be like an Ian-shaped kind of dome in the grass.
I hope the yellow patches isn't from you peeing.
I'm thinking it's just a reputation here.
That's just in the winter.
Yeah. What's the hang that you get? No, it's kind of part of the fun. But yeah, I like to be outdoors. I think that it's again an integral part of a lot of whiskey as well. I suppose is the fact that it's kind of crafted in its landscape. So I'm a geographer at heart. That's why I cut my teeth in, which has nothing to do with whiskey at all. So I did a degree in geography and then kind of stumbled, literally, excuse the pun, into the wine and whiskey industry. But yeah, so I've always had a bit of a thing for the outdoors, and I do enjoy.
There is a bit of connection there. Geography is my favourite subject at school, but things like the farming, crop rotation, all that kind of stuff, that kind of comes into play with,
Yeah, it's one of these things. I think, because we don't really look into things in the same sense as wine does in terms of terroir and all that sort of thing, but it does play an effect. In fact, something I've always been harping on about is not jumping back. It's okay. I'm not going to get a brand plug every 2 minutes, but in Tomintoul, so obviously the where they sit is kind of up in the mountains, but it's also skirting the River Anne. And I'm sure that the humidity that you get from sitting in a river basin, effectively in a valley, must play quite an important part in our warehousing, and we know it to a degree, but we've never really looked into it thoroughly. But I suppose that's a geographical related feature. But I'm like the humidity there will be better than humidity in Brecon, and obviously the more humidity, the better for maturation. You want to be about 68-69%. So yeah. So I'm kind of ongoing, although we've never actually looked into it as a proper study. So there's a bit of geography geek in me that kind of always tries to wedge it in somewhere.
Definitely.
We've got Ross has just come on. He's a late starter to the evening. So Ross was started up the Glencadam appreciation.
He did indeed. Yes, Ross is a lovely guy. And actually, funnily enough, I think I got introduced to Russell and Ross about the same sort of time, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, I again kind of flattered to know there's a Glencadam Appreciation Society, and it's a kind of cool thing. And I suppose anyone that's not in the chat there should check it out. But yeah, it's run by Ross. And yeah, very flattered to know. And again, we'll keep them up to date with some cool bits and pieces that are going on. Ross themselves, I know that there's a good relationship there as well. So we do appreciate it, and good to see him on tuning in there.
Ross was posting up the videos of the water wheel going in. So lots of we've got the picture behind us of the Glencadam kind of frontage just now, and I haven't seen anything about any pictures of apart from the water wheel. So what's been going on? Lots of exciting stuff. Yeah,
so we're building a visitor centre there. It's not going to be a Macallan-esque thing. Don't worry, it's not going to be a kind of all big corporate idea. I'm not even having to go at Macallan. Their visitor centre is incredible. We're not spending that much on it.
There's something for everybody out there. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, so Glencadam is going to be more kind of a nod to its heritage. And even like you kind of said before, it's not that well known a dram, although its reputation is definitely growing. And we've even seen that in the last few years. I think that kind of in terms of sales and also just people talking about it, Glencadam has kind of ramped up steadily over the last few years. which is brilliant to see because again, I love the spirit there. I've been a big fan of it before I worked for them, and obviously my job is to talk about it a bit. But but it's a distillery with a lot of heritage. So although it's not necessarily a big name in the whiskey world, it's been around for almost 200 years. And it's been pretty consistently churning out whiskey for almost 200 years as well, with the exception of a few world wars and a kind of a pretty significant fire. There's actually 2 fires at the turn of the century. It's not really kind of crumbled, and it's been rebuilt when it did have these fires, which means that it's obviously been doing something right all this time ago. So the idea was to kind of give it a nod to its heritage and to kind of give it a bit more justification. It's a distillery that's been kind of churning away through all this time. So we kind of wanted to give it a bit of recognition, I suppose. So it's not going to be a big, ridiculous, massive facility. Glencadam is a small distillery. It's going to be a smaller style of visitor experience. The idea is to build a kind of cafe and restaurant there as well. So the distillery is a really cool place to be. So it's something that, it's a great kind of location to sit. And when we talk about the smell of warehouses and stuff, you'll be breathing all that in while having a coffee in the morning. It's not too bad. So they're kind of building that in, and a lot of they're doing it as well as trying to restore it as much as possible to some of its original features as well. So the water wheel was what powered the distillery for a good period of time. And it's something that if you ever get a chance to come and visit Glencadam with Doug or with Robert, kind of one of Robert's jokes, the first thing is like, oh, when you open the door, what'd you do in 1825? And it's like, oh, you turn on the lights. He's like, well, you don't. So water, obviously, a mixture of flames and water was pretty much how you made whiskey back then. So it was all belts and pulleys that were run by this wheel. And as you may have seen from the video, this thing fairly goes. I think it's fair to say that none of us really. So this is built to the same size and spec as the original. So it's this kind of this wheel that would have churned through the distillery, and it's using the original source of water as well. So there's a kind of sluice gate that comes off the back of the coolant dam. And this thing, this thing fairly goes. So, because again, I thought, how much water and electricity can you generate off this thing? But you wouldn't want to put your hand in there. So what they've done is they've put in this this water wheel. They're converting what was warehouse 4, which is originally the floor maltings. We're not putting in a floor maltings. I'm sorry. I would love to, but I think the kind of logistics of that is more in depth than we need to go into, I suppose, with maltings these days. They're beautiful to see, but for Glencadam, they're converting that into what is currently the offices, which you can see in your background, and then they're going to convert that building into more of the visitor center experience, so kind of build onto the back of that. So we're not really touching the distillery much. They're going to put in a staircase beside the wheel and kind of open that bit up a bit, but otherwise they're trying to leave that as it is, and then kind of developing the back of this building beside the warehousing to then kind of turn into the visitor experience. But COVID happened, so there's nothing really that's gone on. So the visitor centre that you can see there is literally still looks like that. There's no groundwork work in there at all. So it will be a few, another year or so at least, I think, before we can really get it up and going. Ross just said we'll hopefully get a trip organised to see the wheel. Yes, definitely. We'll definitely need to get it running. It's funny. So normally what I would say to anybody tuning in is we'd love to receive you for a tour, but at the moment it is a bit of a building site, so health and safety don't really allow it. But when we can, we'd love to show you around before or after. And that obviously includes your good selves as well. But it's a good thing to come and see. It might be nice for you to have a little glimpse of it before and then afterwards as well. But so it's not.
I'm sure we can dig out some hard hats and come down and help.
Well, yeah, I mean, that'd be fine.
Spade and a hard hat. We'll be on it. Are you accepting guys into Tom and Tell just now, or?
Yeah, again, it's just COVID. So if you let us know, like for both of our distilleries, so we're not really open at the weekends because if you come for a tour, you'll get shown around by either our distillery manager, master distiller, or we'll take our warehouseman or stillman off a shift for a moment to show you around. So the only problem with that is we don't have the people available at the weekends. That will obviously change at Glencadam when we have a visitor centre. But Tom and Tell and Glencadam at the moment are fully functional distilleries. So if you let us know when you're coming up, Tuesdays and Thursdays from memory are the best dates in terms of being able to be flexible. But if anybody that's tuning in wants to come and say hi and see how it's done, drop myself an email or kind of, you can grab my email address off of you guys. I'm very happy with you sharing that. And let us know. It'd be nice to come see it. Again, Tom and Tell there's not a kind of visitor distillery. It's all fully operational. We don't charge for tours or anything daft like that. We're very happy to kind of show you around and have your dram sessions, just making sure that we have time to be able to do so. And if you get a tour with Robert, it's something pretty special. This guy's fourth generation distiller. It's kind of can't really replace that with a student in a kilt.
A geek's dream.
I'll just add that to my list of jobs just now. I'll do.
Get a kilt.
I shouldn't feel too bad. I mean, poor Ali, he's saying that Twin River supplying the hand sanitizer on the rig that he's on just now, and it's not bad mixed with some iron brew. So drinking hand sanitizer with iron brew.
That's one way of doing it, isn't it? Yeah. They're not called Twin River now, are they? They're Still River now. So that's a collectible. Collectible item now, Ali. It's a collectible item.
Yeah,
that's about it. I thought about buying the gin as a collectible thing. I thought I can't be bothered. Yeah, I just can't be bothered making money. I'm having too much fun. That's the thing.
It's always a temptation, I suppose, in retail as well. I think when you'll get access to some amazing stuff, and some of it you'll be aware of the fact that it's probably going to shoot up in value. It's always that self-restraint whether you want to. If you want to be somebody who keeps it and uses it as a pension fund, or whether you want to crack it open and get a good taste.
Get it down the hatch, exactly. That's exactly what we should be doing.
It was the worst thing starting up the shop. So when we started up as a kind of independent, not really known or anything, I had a bar. So we knew Gordon MacPhail. So a lot of our stock, pretty much all of our open stock, give or take, came from Gordon MacPhail. We just kind of built it up over about a year and a half. And in that year and a half, a lot of the stock I'd bought had stopped, had gone. And I was like, did I put this on the shelf for this? Did I keep it? And quickly, over the first kind of 6 months, maybe a year, really, you have to get in the mindset of you're not buying it for yourself. You're buying it for guys like Phil, Ross, Duncan, who can come in and buy it and they enjoy it. It was a big change for me because, being a pub owner, you just open a bottle and put it on the shelf and you let people buy it. But seeing whiskey as this so sought after and kind of, and probably, I don't know if it was quite at that level then, but 5-6 years ago, it wasn't quite at that what we're at now, where people are. We've got the FOMO bottles and the unicorns and all these kind of stuff. But we have to have the mindset that we're buying for our customers, which is why the staff don't. We don't let them buy any of these Daft Mills or Springbanks, or Russell's had to go to Nick in Aberdeen or to buy the bottles or whatever.
I suppose it's a fair point though. It's a difficult one to draw a line on. And it's funny. So I when I worked in retail, I did whiskey investment before it was cool. But ironically, that's when you made good money in whiskey though. Like back then was because nowadays everybody wants to do it, and there's still good money to be made, but you could make some serious cash in whiskey kind of 8-9 years ago from buying the right thing. Although it wasn't as upfront where it was, and not many distilleries banded what was collectible and what wasn't. But I used to run a little kind of an investment club, or kind of for high-end collectors. And I would literally read up on like whiskey magazine articles and kind of find out what's coming up, what's doing well, and be like, right, these are things you should keep an eye on. The annoying thing that I kick myself for every day is that I was just fresh out of uni, so I couldn't buy any of this stuff. So I have a small collection which I sold quite a lot of kind of over the last kind of 5 years. But yeah, some of the stuff that I was buying and selling that I knew would do well, I literally didn't have the budget to buy. And I should have known, I should have taken a loan out or something because ridiculous money. But yeah, I think that now it's become really trendy, and ironically, it's kind of it's either harder to get the really sought after things, and that's why it makes sense that you're not necessarily letting your staff kind of buy them. But everything's just become collectible, and people buy and sell without ever tasting bottles, which is a shame. But
that's one of my big grievances. The other one that's a big worry for me, because we want to give honest advice to people who are in the shop buying, will this earn money? And well, there's no guarantee. I mean, take Macallan, for example. They're releasing so many whiskies that are just for collectors. And what made Macallan sought after was because they were getting drunk, they were getting open, they were getting drank. So what was left was 2 or 3 out of 1,000 batch bottling. Now there's only going to be about 2 or 3 open out of that 1,000 batch bottles. So come 10, 15 years, everyone's going to be selling the same stuff, and it's just that how do you counter that? Where do you balance that out? What I like is guys like Springbank, Lefroy, because they're affordable collectibles. You can open it. You can open it and enjoy it, and they won't make so much. Although the last Springbank, the local barley, has gone mental, and it's please don't fall into that. trap.
Yeah,
Don't call it, because people afford it and they buy it and they like it. And the amount of bottles that you see open of Springbank 12-year cask strength over a Macallan concept or whatever. It's scary.
I think and for me, when I was doing it, when I was dabbling, it was always like, well, I very much bought it on the basis that I can always drink it. In terms of you don't want to invest so much that you're like, this is literally it's not like buying bonds or things like that. Like you can't drink bonds, but like it was like, do you know what? If I buy this and I'm like, I can afford to buy it to this level, and if it's and if it does well, then fair enough. I'll maybe trade it in for some other whiskies, and if it doesn't, I'll drink it. But I agree with Philip what he's saying there too. I was actually, funnily enough, I was speaking to a customer on Tuesday. I had a tasting, and they were saying that there's a store in the States. I've totally forgotten what the name is. That they were selling. They give people an option. So obviously in America, different situation. Pappy Van Winkle's the bottle in question, and they were selling that you can either buy it and they open it for you on site. So they take the foil off and you buy it for $100, or if you're buying it to keep, it's $1,000.
Nice.
$1,000.
Yeah, but I mean that's what they're flipping for. But I was like, that's actually genius because effectively that's what they can buy at a cost, but they only get their allocation. So like if you actually want to drink this, kind of here's what we'll sell it to you for, but you need to prove you're opening it up. And if you're not going to drink it and you're just using it to flip, then we could sit on that and make that money. So you can pay what it's going for on the market, and then still if that's what you want. But I was like, do you know what? I don't know how that logistically works in the UK, but I was like, I can see where they're coming from.
We wouldn't be allowed to open it in the shop because you're not allowed to sell open bottles.
Well, exactly, yeah.
But I know Royal Mile do
the front door, right
outside. Yeah, they'll go out the front door.
Yeah. Royal Mile do something similar with their Drammers Club,
cool.
but I don't think it's quite as
brutal as that.
I think it's like a £10 voucher or something you get.
That makes sense.
It's nice. Yeah, it's a good way of doing it. I mean, we looked at having an embassy, a kind of not a secret club, but an in-house club that people paid to be a member and they got first dibs. Yeah. Unfortunately, we ended up selling a lot to the people who we never really seen in the shop. And the idea of it to start off with was regular customers who get rewarded. Unfortunately, that kind of fell away. So it's we've stopped it. And looking at other ways of doing it.
It became that horrible fastest finger on the button, and people were saying that literally the bottles in a basket, 10 seconds later it's sold out. How's that? Yeah. And you're like, well, we can't manage that, so we just need to stop it because it was just making people feel bad. And
genuinely, I know it's a kind of tough topic because it's kind of a logistical nightmare for the retailer, and you guys aren't doing it to screw people over. You're just selling the bottle that everyone else is selling, but you get your allocation, they get their allocation, and you kind of. Yeah, you can't really be in control of what happens with that. So it's kind of one of these situations. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But
there was a shop down in Fife. We won't mention another shop, but I think they got 10,000 hits for the Daffmill release, and it crashed. Yeah. It completely crashed their website, so they couldn't then do any online sales. So from a business point of view, they had a disaster of a day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
After this bottle of Daffmill.
That's the first layer off. I'm afraid.
There it goes.
Just getting far too hot.
I believe
man. The creases are almost out, so nobody will notice that.
I've got a string vest on under here, but okay, we'll be fine.
I suppose you're at that age now, aren't you, Russell?
That's right.
I'm on the Nesbits.
I just had a wee sip of the port cast, and it's been a while. Obviously, it's not my first dram, but it's been a while since I had it. And it's just absolutely fantastic.
This was the bottle that made you start up the port appreciation page, wasn't it?
Yeah. We started up the port cask appreciation because there's sherry bomb appreciation and all that. So I started up a port one, and this was the bottle that made me think, actually, it deserves some praise. It deserves to be sung about. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yes, that 06 was it's like jammy Dodgers with like a big bunch of clove rock in it. It was awesome.
Yeah. So are you involved in the tasting notes for these?
I'm indeed for most of them. Yeah. So actually, funny enough, going forward, I'll be doing all the tasting notes. Whereas some of them were before. It's a funny one as well when you're talking about Robert. So Robert firmly doesn't believe in tasting notes. And he's very much about the fact that it's all about how you should taste. And I agree with that to a degree. Because the tasting notes are really there as a guide. But I'm trying to think of the 06. I think I probably wrote those notes. If you read them out, I can tell you if they're mine or not.
We have got you mentioned the fruit compote. So we've got light plummy summer fruit sweetness with underlying biscuit malt, raspberries, blackberries, and red cherries. No.
So they were before that they were written by Duncan Baldwin, who's again big part of the company, does a lot of our single casks, which again I'm kind of getting passed on to as well. But I could tell from the way that's written that it wasn't me, which is not a negative or a positive. I better say that diplomatically. But yeah, I can tell you which ones are mine and which ones aren't. So I tried to make my notes relatively accessible. And I'm not saying that in a right or a wrong way. It's just kind of the way I do it, because I think that if you go too expressive in your tasting notes and you get too over-egged, then actually you can lose people. So I tried to tell you what you're going to taste. So I'll be like, oh, it's going to be sweet and nutty with notes of da-da-da-da. I try not to lead it too specific. So if you're like, oh, it tastes like kumquats and wild nuts.
Tasting notes.
Yeah, whereas if it tastes kind of fruity and sweet, then you're like, okay, I kind of get what that is. And then by all means, fire in the kumquats and the mountain flowers. But yeah, mine tend to be a bit more simplistic in their layout on purpose. Depending on the dram, of course. But again, it's one of these things. Tasting notes are very debated. But I think I'm looking at
far better to say that you could enjoy this dram while you're camping outside Tom and Till than say you could enjoy sipping this when you're moored off the Riviera in your yacht.
Yeah. On an autumn evening in the savannah is when I would crack open a bottle of this. No, it's a difficult one, and I think that. So I would love to shift tasting notes to like situational experiences, because I think people associate with situations more than they associate with flavors. And obviously a lot of how people remember whiskey is all about when they had it, not necessarily what it tasted like. And I definitely say that some of the best drams I've ever had have been more about what I was doing at the time and who I was with than necessarily I'm like, oh yeah, I totally remember it tasted like that. But yeah, so I'd love to be like, oh, you know, it feels like sitting beside a fireplace in a large leather armchair. Or pleather for the vegans. Or you've got that's not a thing of veganism, I promise. But I feel it should be all encompassing. Because I actually had this come back. There was an old Balanchine we did in China, and a bottle was available in various places, and I was like, it tastes like streaky bacon. And they're like, well, I don't eat bacon. I'm like, well, it tastes like what streaky bacon would taste like if you were eating. I'm like, not necessarily that thing. And I'm aware I'm digging myself a hole here, so I'll stop. But you don't want to be too specific. Like, yeah, if you say it tastes like beef Wellington with a bit of red wine jus, it doesn't necessarily answer to everyone. But that's why we're having a Blether. Yeah, so I digress a little bit, but yeah, I think it's making it relatable is kind of part of the fun of tasting notes. And again, if you could make it about situational experiences, like a picnic in the park when it's 18 degrees outside, something like that, would be great. But again, I don't think that would win over every audience. So we try to, we give you an idea of the flavors that are coming forwards.
Yeah, I've mentioned her a few times, and she's going to come on the Blether with us sometime soon. But Abby from Brew Claddy. She does a lot of Tempe crisp matchings with the Space Raiders and discos.
Nice.
I think it's fantastic.
That's a brilliant idea.
That's fantastic.
If I can find out,
you were drinking Octomore at the time, but pairing a £120 bottle with a 10p bag of crisps is just standard, isn't it?
Monster Munch. I like to drink this with a bag of Monster Munch.
To be fair, it absolutely works. I've done Old Balanchine 10-year-old with Frazzles before,
well, there you go.
which is not quite 10p, but it's kind of in the same realm. But yeah, it definitely. If you get the right things together, it's good fun. I like that idea. That's genius.
So talking of tasting notes, Iain, I believe you've got a wee sample in front of you.
I have indeed, and I'm very excited to have this. It's funny. So I've looked at batches of this year before.
That's a bigger sample that we've got.
Is it actually? Yeah. I mean, this sample here.
Have you left any in there?
I can transfer you the rest. I was in the office. I'll be honest with you. I was in the office yesterday and picking up a bunch of. We're doing a few new releases. One of which is quite a cool Glencairn, which keep your eyes peeled for. But it's I was in a message Russell just on Facebook saying, look, I don't know. I've actually not tried your cask, or I've not knowingly tried your cask recently. Anyway, do you want me to grab a sample? So I literally just asked the guys to grab one in a hurry. And it's easier to grab a big sample than a small sample if it's just something straight out of the. So I've got all the little snowflakes of char in there too.
Oh, brilliant!
but I'm quite happy to. I can bring the rest of this to you since it is the
we're hoping that the load of bottles will be suffice.
That's right.
I mean, it's the 400 or 500 ml samples that I took you got to worry about, but otherwise. But yeah, no. So I'm very excited to try. So I think I may have tried this in passing because I tend to do I'll do like sweep analysis of various vintages and various fills. So I've looked at like BB1s and stuff from this era, but I don't know if I've actually tried this cask or not because a lot of what we put onto our single cask availability has been checked by either myself, Doug, or Robert at some point to make sure that it's all okay. So I've not actually tasted this yet. I've just nosed it because I thought I didn't know. I don't want to overstep my welcome really with this large sample that I've got. But it smells awesome. It's very quintessential BB1 Glencadam. But it smells like it's going to be a bit of a big boy. I've not tried it yet, but it smells like it's going to be quite kind of robust and full on, which is always good fun with the Glencadam 15. But
have you seen the tasting notes on the bottles?
I have when you published them ages ago, but I couldn't recall them to be honest. Was toasted marshmallows in there?
I was just wanting to compare to see how you would compare to our tasting note.
I could put you out your misery and just tell you, or we could wait and see what you think.
Wait and you think about it.
Wait and see.
Yeah,
the motor taste. Let's see how good you are, Russell.
Are we trying it together? Have you not got a sample with you? Because I've drank.
We don't know. We can't go. Yeah, we only got little ones.
I didn't say. Sorry about that.
I can't believe I managed to actually choose with such a small sample. It was like licking the inside of the glass just to get it.
I think it tastes of this, but it's what's the ABV on it?
60.3.
Yeah,
60.3.
So the latest gauge of MTV Cask was 60 bang on.
Yeah, cool.
So
I've got the label in front of me here.
And did you write the notes at cask strength, or did you write the notes when diluted?
Cask strength.
No cask strength.
So on the nose, it smells like fire. No, I'm just kidding. It's very. So genuinely, I gave this a sniff in the bottle, and I was like, oh. So Glencadam in between, kind of Glencadam in a bourbon cask, especially something like a BB1, where it's kind of big and rich and robust. You're getting all those kind of oils coming through. Between kind of 14 and 18, it's awesome. Really, I mean, Glencadam 15, you know how much I love that dram anyway. And for me, it's just a great establishment of that full-on style. The 18 we do isn't as much of the BB1 character, so it's totally different. But I love that kind of big, thick, kind of heady style of Glencadam. Yeah. Nose is awesome. I would give you, I mean, not just because I said toasted marshmallows from before, but you definitely get that kind of candied sweetness there. It's got like the sugar on top of a creme brulee. Bit of like maybe a bit of Bounty Bar as well. There's a bit kind of desiccated coconut, milk chocolate, loads of vanilla and that kind of tonka beanie kind of headiness that you get with BB1s. That's kind of a bit obvious. It's great. It's funny because although it's 60, it's noticeable. I know I joked about it being like fire, but actually it's really it's heady. It's big, but it's not pulling out your nostril hairs.
Of the limited Glencadam and Tom and Tile range that I've had at cask strength, and we had 63, I think. We had one at 63. Was that the 96? And it was so easy on the nose. There was no burn, and none of them that I've had, which is why I've kind of got a big thing with you guys in the single. I like single cask whiskey anyway, but to nose it, you sometimes do, like you say, you have to put in a bit of water and just open up. And I don't find that I have to. I do, after a while, try it, water in it, but you don't have to. We actually chose this. So we got two samples, cask 494 and 490, that both were excellent, and it was very, very little between us. I think Russell preferred one, and I was 1 point in it, wasn't it? Yeah,
there's 1 point in it.
So I tried them one night and then swapped them over, tried them the other night, just licking the back of the hand of each sample. And tried it with water. And the second one, the cask that we didn't pick, I thought it lost it with water, just lost that edge, which is why we kind of went for the 494. And I thought, for me, not saying it wasn't good, but this one just held up with water, kept that kind of flavour, kept that mouthfeel better with some water in it.
Well, when you get Glencadam of that kind of cask type and you add water to it, it becomes so thick. It's great. I mean, it's really oily anyway, but when you add the water, it really thickens up, and it's like biting into like a vanilla sponge cake with tons of tons of icing butter on it. It's a really kind of thick, creamy mouthfeel to it. I'm loving the nose on this. I know I said this to you earlier, Russell. I really like the nose on this. It's beautiful.
So some of the other things you haven't mentioned, but it's all in there. It's that kind of freshly peeled mandarins, pineapple syrup.
Yeah.
Going back to the kind of almost the kind of the Aberclough type sort of thing that I love. Raspberry milkshake. That kind of coconut kind of it just came right through.
Yeah.
Is that probably it's that kind of just that sharpness of the raspberry milkshake.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good taste though. It's kind of there's definitely that kind of there's a citrus kick to it. There's that kind of expressed oils from like over the top of an old fashioned sort of element to it. There's also I was going to say that for me I get like you know when you get oat granola and you get the wee chunks of papaya in it.
Oh yeah.
Like the kind of dried papaya with a bit of oat dust on them. It's that kind of it reminded me of that. Yeah, I know what you mean about the kind of pineapple syrup sort of element. Right, slange everyone.
Yeah,
guys.
Yes, good health. Good health. I'm glad you're enjoying that one. I'm glad we got it.
Really looking forward to it. So just while Iain's tasting this one, we are releasing pre-orders today at 8 o'clock. So if you are interested, head over to the website and I'll pop the link on. So don't leave the chat, please. Stick around. But yeah, we are pre-ordered. So we are expecting kind of early August for it to arrive with us. But if you're interested in this bottle, there's only 240 bottles.
228.
Okay, 228.
227 now because I'm joking.
228's on the label, but I don't know if that'll change.
Yeah, so we got an updated label today. That's why I said we're 60 bang on, and 242 bottles.
Nice.
Is what we've got. So if you are a member of the Glencadam Appreciation Society, Ross is going to be firing up a discount for those guys. So sign up to the Appreciation Society, and you'll get a wee prize or a wee surprise on there for the discount code. So feel free to pre-order. And I say it won't be available till early August, but we expect it to. It already by talking to people about it, they're very excited about it. So we can't wait to have it. And it comes as the distillery bottles are. Lovely label, the beautiful blue box, which I think they're a nightmare photo for product for the shop, but they look great when they're in your hand.
I love the Glencadam packet. I mean, it's one of the things I used to have a whole shelf full of empty bottles of. I mean, this one is the black one, but I love the racing green on the 18. I love the sky blue and the Andalus. The Ferrari red of the cognac was quite beautiful to see. The deep blue of the 19 is just, I just love the coloration of the packaging.
So the kind of royal blue that you get on the single cast is really cool. That's the same one as the 19 carryover, pretty much.
Yeah.
And the 18, I love British Racing Green. Never had a car in British Racing Green. I feel that if you do have a car in that color, it kind of needs to be a significant car.
Absolutely, with a Glencadam sticker on the side of it.
Yeah. I've seen it really expensive. I'm pretty sure they probably have that, but no, I love that kind of deep green color.
Yeah. I think my dad's first card or one of his favorite cards was a British Racing Green Mini that he had.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Which you love, but the first card I remember was a clapped out old red Metro, which didn't quite have the same romanticism. They probably had to sell the car to afford me. But,
Hey, you don't knock the Metro. The Metro was the top rally car back in its day. That was Colin McRae Senior took the world by storm in a Metro.
Yeah. I don't want to finish this bottle now because it's 2006, which obviously our cask is. So it'd be nice to do it side by side.
Yeah, it would be cool to show actually. I was going to say not just because it's ours, but I mean that's stunning. It's great. I've not added any water to it. It's lovely. It's like the palate's like salted caramel and like toffee apple sort of thing. Yeah, I'm getting kind of. I know I was saying coconut before, but I mean like Crimbles this time. It's kind of more sticky. Not quite macaroon bars, but sticky coconut chocolate. Definitely, a bit of that, like maybe Bassett's nugget, however you want to pronounce it. The pink and whites.
Yeah. So I went with
you've made his day. You've made his day.
There's bags of chocolate, bags of hazelnuts, nougat, toffee, a wee hint of spicy pepper there.
Yeah,
and then just a lovely sweet toffee to finish, and a bit of lingering licorice as well, just kind of there.
Yeah, it's got a typical Glencairn mouthfeel in terms of your mouth jumps to life, but then it's not got like a burn. For something that's 60%, you feel it. It's cozy, but it's not got scratching its way down your esophagus.
It's not going to give you a heartburn. Yeah,
reaching for the Gavin's gone.
Yeah.
It's really. I just had a complete mind blank there because I'm listening to your tasting notes and I'm thinking there, God, am I drinking the same? And I'm not. I'm completely not drinking the right brand. I'm not getting that. I'm really not getting that.
You needed a bourbon. You needed an ex-bourbon.
Yeah.
Just
it's definitely a lot 14 than it used to be. No, that's a cracking dram. Yeah, superb. Good choice. And I'll give you the rest of the sample back. I won't.
Oh, you finish it. Listen. You're on here for another hour at least. So.
Fair enough. I mean, if you want to take me 100 mils and 60 ABV, I mean, it could be an interesting into it. But
we'll maybe do when we get the bottles in. We'll maybe do something at the shop with a tasting or something. So you can keep the sample for that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Cool. Are you saying you won't give me another sample when I come to the shop? I'm joking.
I will
No, stunning. Great cask. I mean. Again, Glencairn is really consistent, and I think that part of the reason that we love to kind of sing about it is literally because the spirit it drinks well from really young to really old, which is again is not every distillery could say that. Some whiskies are great in the kind of teens and older whiskies. Some drink really well young, and some are kind of crafted to be either way. And Tom and Tell is definitely a spirit that drinks well with a bit of age on it. It's nice from its infancy, but Tom and Tell kind of mid-teens is when it really kind of comes alive. Glencairn, although I was saying about these bourbon casks being fantastic, Glencairn at kind of 5 years old can be brilliant. It's really fresh and zingy and heady and kind of bright aperitif, lively sort of limey style. And then when it gets older, it becomes much more of that kind of old cooked fruits, pineapple upside down cake, all that kind of thing when it gets a lot older. So it's fun to try across.
I remember having a bottle of that boutique 6-year-old, and it was like pineapple juice. I mean, it was like a carton. It was just so fruity.
Have you tried the new make like Adam?
The new make? No.
Yeah.
I'd love to. Yeah. I'd love to. Yeah.
Right. So since I've stolen 100 mils of your cask, I will.
I was actually wondering why the ABV.
It's in a cask and you make. Oh, fantastic.
That's why the ABV's dropped, isn't it? Because Ian stole all the samples. Up with water.
I definitely need to tidy up upstairs if Ian's taking us a cask. I'll need to make room for that one.
Well, I was going to say, what I'll do is I'll put together a care package of some weird and wonderful treats. Because again, I've been fortunate. I take it, did you ever try the Glencairn 14-year-old Oloroso?
Yes. No, I never got to try that.
Yeah, I was going to say you've tried the cognac one, which is made by a genius, but the one before they had that master blender and such, it's still pretty good. But no, there's a 12-year-old Portwood from way back when, a 14-year-old. There's also the original 15, which has the castle on the label. Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen that
one either. I've never.
I will. So I'm fortunate to have bits of these bottles left. So I'll put together a little care package of bygone Glencairn.
Oh, wow.
You can try some. But as a thanks for me to get to try this, I'll put together something of some weird and wonderfuls because there's some cool stuff of times gone by. And I'll throw some new make in there if you try as well because it makes a mean pina colada. But it's
indeed, absolutely.
But yeah, it's good fun.
The 17 Tawny Port was pretty good.
Yeah. The 17. So I've been, or I don't know how public it is. I might have been working on the next release of that. That's even better than the last one, I think. But I have to say that. But no, it's awesome. So that'll be the next release of Portwood's coming out soon. But there's a few cool Glencairns coming out before the end of the year. There's a bit of a hold up in packaging at the moment. I don't know if that's affecting your cask as well, but there's a bit of a kind of stopgap at the moment because of Brexit and all the other fun things.
We know that a lot of other distilleries had cartons and cardboard stuck in the Suez Canal. And
So there's a bit of a kind of delay on that stuff. So all being well, there'll be a few new releases. I'm just kind of finalizing them at the moment. But yeah, both of the ones I'm working on, aside from the aforementioned, are going to be new cask types as well. So types that you're not seeing from Glencairn yet. So a project I've been farting about with for the last 3 years. From my kind of previous blended status to my new blended status, I've kind of seen it from start to finish. So I'm quite excited to show off what other cask types we've got. So they're all kind of in the pipeline as well. I meant to say as well when I joined on, Russell, I'm so glad you're on board with sherry.
Oh yes, I was going to bring us back. I was going to bring us back to that. So yes,
it might be linked to what I've just been talking about. But when you held up that glass of Fino, I was like, damn it, I should have poured myself a sherry. This is perfect sherry weather.
Yeah, just lovely, and I've had it in the fridge for a week as well.
Yeah,
I phoned before I left work to say to Rachel, could you please put that in the fridge? She goes, it was in last Saturday. I was, God, fantastic! It'll be well chilled in, and it's lovely. I'm going to pour another one just now, just to kind of
Have you ever, the Spanish almonds you get, the salted almonds? I've totally forgotten what the real name is for them. But they're like I think it begins with an M, but it's a different type of almond that they that's kind of roasted and salted. But that with Fino sherry is literally the best.
Not macadamias, no.
No, it's like a particular type of, someone in the chat might know, but it's like a...
Guys, if you listen, if Annie Manson's listening, she'll know.
Yes, Annie, tell us. Annie will be so disappointed if we don't know. I hope she's not listening, actually.
I don't know if you've ever come across Annie Manson. She's a sherry expert. She's the great granddaughter of John Manson, who was one of the founding brothers of Glengarry.
Oh, right. Oh, cool.
So her family's embedded in whiskey, but she went off to Spain, and she was on our chat a couple of weeks ago. We just talked about sherry.
Cool.
We had roasted tomatoes, and we had olives and cheese.
With a whole platter.
I think we ate more than we drank, to be honest.
With a proper kind of tapas night going on, like, it was fantastic.
But her knowledge
about
sherry.
Yeah, she does a cook school, Annie Mo's cook school. She went down to, I think she was on banking or something, and she went down to London and decided she wanted to do something else. And she had a cook school going, and then took off to Jerez.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Had no idea about the sherry heritage when she went there. She just wanted to live there with a view across to Morocco.
Yeah.
Realised it was sherry country as well, so completely got into it, and she's now a bit of an expert. So yeah.
Nice. Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a brilliant. It's a forgotten industry which is starting to come back a little bit. But it's so good, and so Jerez, it's part of. So I don't know if you've had Andy Bell or Scott Adamson or any of these guys on.
Scott we've had.
So we're in a kind of group that we call Make Sherry Cool Again, and we kind of created it as a bit of a laugh because we all love sherry, and we've been out to Jerez a couple of times together, kind of visiting bodegas and just kind of chatting about sherry a bit. And it's a good excuse to put on about 3 stone and drink loads of sherry.
That sounds like my kind of gig. That
it's not bad.
Where do we sign for that?
Yeah, there's always more. There's room for more members. But yeah, it's kind of been, because again, like, as you know, in the industry and in whiskey, kind of a lot of the casks that we use are sherry casks, but they're not sherry casks as they used to be. So they're what we call kind of seasoned sherry casks. So they're barrels that have been filled with sacrificial sherry, effectively. And what I mean by that is it's not the same quality as you're getting in your glass of Tia Pepe there, but it's kind of sherry that they fill into barrels for 24 to 36 months, depending on your seasoning time, and then they reuse it until they don't want to use it anymore, and they pour it down the drain or they turn it into vinegar. And it does give you Oloroso sherry seasoned casks. You get the flavour to a degree, but old school sherry barrels were held sherry for 20, 30 years. And the reason that they aren't available anymore is because people don't drink sherry in the same volume as they used to. It's not necessarily kind of as an alternative, but it's because kind of demand from the industry has outsupplied or outstripped the actual physical cast available in Jerez. So I suppose what we're trying to do is trying to get people to drink more sherry because it means there's more cash for whiskey. So it works out both ways. And some of the relationships I've built through going out to Jerez, I mean, we buy some of our PX casks come from some of my favorite producers in Spain. So our PX at the moment is coming from 2 producers. It's coming from Fernando de Castilla, who are one of my favorite sherry producers all around. In terms of everything from Fino to PX, Fernando de Castilla, everything they put their hand to is amazing.
Really?
Yeah, it's so good. Again, when I'm coming to Inverurie, but we'll get I'll bring you some sherry to try as well.
Fantastic.
But and the other is
you stayed for a week.
I don't know. I'm kind of planning
I might as well book myself into a hotel. I think.
Well, yeah, I can definitely I can introduce those guys. Honestly, they can do no wrong. Absolutely incredible sherries. And then the other one we buy from, which are a family-owned company, are called Jimenez Spinola. And as you may guess from the name Jimenez, they're actually, all they do is PX. They are PX specialists. So Fernando de Castilla do the best broad spectrum. Jimenez Spinola literally make everything from a dry sherry to sweet sherry using PX grapes. They're amazing guys. And and their sherries are like hen's teeth. They're very expensive to buy. Totally worth the money. I think a bottle of Heaven Espanola PX will cost you about 45 quid. You'll never look back, honestly. Like, you could have it in like teaspoons, and every teaspoon would be just it's really good. So we buy from both of these guys, and the casks we buy from them are full season casks. So they cost a bit more. They actually give you less finishes because kind of the tannins and things like that you would get in season casks are different. They last a bit longer. Whereas when you're getting a long matured sherry butt, kind of all of those have been extracted over the decades that it's held sherry, but actually the single finish you get out of them is amazing. So we've got some PX coming in from these guys that you'll hopefully see coming out from us in the next year or so. So that's the super sweet side of sherry, but obviously there's all the dry increments as well, which are amazing, and you get your Amontillado and your Finos and your Manzanillas. Yeah, I can't recommend it.
That's the line I've fallen down. I've fallen down the Fino, the Amontillado, the Manzanilla. That's definitely where I'm at. I'm as much as I like a sherried whiskey, I'm not so keen on the sweet sherry.
Yeah,
I love the dry stuff. I love this Fino, and phenomenal.
It's great. So my favorite is Palo Cortado. I don't know if you've tried. Have you tried Palo Cortado?
Yeah, I love a Palo Cortado. Yeah.
Palo Cortado, if it's is like it's like biting into a hot salty pretzel. It's like a proper old, a big American or German style pretzel, not one of the ones you get in the packet crisps. But
yes, indeed, absolutely. Yeah. One from a stand in New York.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's good stuff. I'd say, I could be quite happy on a desert island with some good Glencadam and some and some Fino. That would do me fine. Or some Palo Cortado.
Yeah, it would be awesome. Yeah,
that's what I need. That's what I need for work just now, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I keep you going.
Well, pencil stand at the front door.
Yeah, and a little football called Wilson. That'll keep me going.
When Mike goes to the shop, he's like, "What's happened to you?" Yeah, saying the
beer's going to be down here. Yeah, the shop's going to be off.
I do some dental work with an ice hockey boot.
Oh man, guys, please don't take this seriously. You're welcome in. There'll be a sane, normal person behind the shop.
Do you carry a few sherries? I was going to say, do you carry a few sherries at the shop, Mike?
Yeah. Russell, he accepted the order just in.
I booked some in today, so Amontillado Oloroso arrived today. We got some fine ruby port. In today as well, and we've got some nice Finos. So I mean, we usually have a little bit more, but we're starting to build up the stock again.
It builds up. It kind of goes through seasons. At Christmas, everyone's looking for sherry and port, and then it dies off. Summer, kind of it does, but more like the Finos and the Manzanillas and things like that. People are looking for not so much the Pedro Jimenez and that. And again, back to Christmas. So a little bit. See, we don't keep it too long because. No, we don't keep too big a stock on it because it doesn't kind of keep very long. So, Duncan's asking if we've got a Cortado or Glencadam coming soon.
So Duncan, interestingly enough, as much as I'm harping on about it, it's really hard to get Cortado casks. So I'll be honest to say I haven't got any Palo Cortado casks yet. I'm working on it. I might have some allocated for next year. So because these are all kind of fully matured wood, effectively it's when they take a Solera apart is when you get it.
I've only seen two that I remember Palo Cortado casks, and they both came from the youngest master blender.
Did they?
Deanston and Buna.
Cool. Nice.
We're both Palo Cortados, but that's the only two I recall seeing.
I've tried a couple. I think Tomatin did one once upon a time as well. The only thing I would say is if for whiskey, the difference between an Amontillado finish and a Palo Cortado finish is quite similar.
I was going to say Tomatin's Amontillado is sublime.
Yeah.
So on a sherry basis, they taste very different, but actually the flavors you get from using those casks, Amontillado and Palo Cortado are quite similar. So Amontillado casks are easier to get than Palo Cortado casks. So I might go down the easier to attain route because getting Palo Cortado is a bit of a nightmare. But again, I've not gone down that route yet, but it is something I'm looking to do more with.
You might prefer to have the Palo Cortado in the Savannah, though. I mean, that's.
Well, yeah. So exactly. If they can send it full, that's a whole different story. If they need to send a full cask, and I need to kind of drain it in some way or other, we'll see what we can do. But have you guys tried on Rama sherry before, which is like unfiltered? On Rama.
Say again.
ENRAMA on Rama. So different producers do this at the kind of turn of each vintage. And it's got a really short shelf life, but it's great. So it's unfiltered sherry. It goes through you like a freight train. I'm just kidding, but it's it's like really cloudy. It looks like cloudy lemonade. It's got a really kind of a opaque color. It tastes great. It's so full flavored, and they do on Ramas at various releases can do finos or Amontillados, etc. It tends to be done the fino route.
I was going to ask, is that a certain style of sherry does that, or is it?
So people play around with different ones, but it tends to be finos and manzanillas generally. But yeah, definitely keep your eyes peeled for on Ramas. They tend to come and go. The vintages always kind of sell out, but they don't keep for a huge amount of time. But yeah, it's like, have you ever tried unpasteurized milk? It's got they've got a totally different character to them altogether. But they're really good fun to try. Not that that's anything to do with whiskey casks at all. I can't even remember where I got to that conclusion. But you should try on Ramas sometime.
We're talking about sherry. It's we've moved off of it, and that was one of the things I wanted to talk to, because I know you're such a huge fan of sherry, and in terms of getting to know a bit more about you and your love of what it is you enjoy. You love sherry,
yeah. It's a funny one. So I joined the industry, as I said, by joining retail. Am I allowed to mention the competitors I worked for, or shall I leave that?
Oh, you're allowed to work. You can mention whoever you want. Yeah.
So I got my teeth working for Woodwinters in Bridge of Allen, which is where I'm based now. But they taught me a lot of what I know about kind of wines and spirits. So I definitely owe them a debt of gratitude. So I worked my way up through them, and effectively I joined them as a wine specialist. So they trained me up in tasting wine. But I've always had a real passion for whiskey. So my whiskey passion predates kind of going to uni. My dad and my granddad are big whiskey fans. I've always really enjoyed whiskey, although it'd be fair to say that at uni I couldn't afford to drink the good stuff, unless I went home to see them. But so I kind of got, but I always kind of geeked out a little bit on whiskey. So when I started working in wine, I was comfortable talking about spirits, but wine was something I was still learning on the go. So I kind of gravitated towards being the kind of, I got nicknamed by Kim, who still works there, as the whiskey guru, because I just kind of became the guy who did whiskey in the business. And although wine is very much part of what I learned, and I love wines as well. I'm fortunate to have a pretty sizable amount of bottles in the house that I've been laying down for a while. Again, occupational hazard, totally broke, but loads and loads of alcohol.
Cash poor, alcohol rich.
Yeah. I would do that. Yeah.
It's not a bad way to be.
It's not too bad. But yeah, so I've got a garage full of the stuff. I'm trying to work on a cellar at the moment. We're kind of doing up this house that we bought a year and a half ago. I'd love to get an actual cellar, but again, like I said, broke. Plenty of bottles. But yeah, so I kind of got into wine, and sherry kind of came as part of that, because funnily enough, fortified wines are like the kind of bridging point between spirits and wine. Because obviously they use kind of eau de vie and stuff or kind of effectively neutral brandy and fortified, and it jumps up a little bit in ABV. So I found that I understood spirits, and then because of that, I got a real understanding of fortifieds, and wine was kind of in amongst it all. So I worked for them for just about 4 years, and then I worked for Robertson's in Pitlochry, who you mentioned for your before. So I worked with Iain for just over a year, and for him, I actually so he was a whiskey specialist, as you all know. But he was kind of developing a wine sense to his kind of branch. So I kind of joined him to help develop the wine and do a bit of local wholesaling and that sort of thing. So kind of took over what I'd learned from before. And all throughout this, I'd obviously been loading up on lots of bottles of whiskey, and Robertson's had an amazing selection to choose from too. And kind of my wine side kind of carried through. And sherry was always something that I just kind of stuck with me, because it's kind of like working for the brands I work for now. I kind of like rooting for the underdogs. I think that, and I'm not saying that, oh, poor me, get the violins out. But I mean, Angus and Dundee, both of our brands aren't mainstream. Tom and Tell, you don't find it in multiple grocers. It's not a massive brand like Glenfiddich, Glenlivet, or Macallan, and these kind of things. It's getting better known, which is cool. But I always kind of have that affinity with sherry for the same reason. Like, people like, sherry, everyone just thinks of Harvey's Bristol Cream. And I was like, there's so much more to that. It's kind of great to show people, and they go, oh, wow, like you hand someone a ice cold Fino at the freezer or fridge, and they go, bloody hell, that's amazing. What's that? You're like, that's scary. Like, can't be. So, yeah, I think I kind of gravitated towards fortified wines for that reason. So sherry, Marsala, port, always had a real soft spot for them. And I suppose that then developed into when I was speaking to Scott and Andy and Peter Mackay as well, who was the guy that kind of founded it all. Paul Dempsey as well, who you know pretty well. He's another one of the kind of sherry bandits.
Is that the same Peter Mackay from?
Paul's watching tonight, so yeah.
Really? All right. Oh, there you go. But yeah, so I don't know if sherry bandits is the official term, but we kind of we thought about that kind of element.
Is that the Peter Mackay, former Morrison Mackay?
It is indeed. Yeah.
Scholar. Peter McCarthy.
Yeah. So he, so we've all got our own kind of whiskey, our sherry nicknames as well. So Paul's Palomino, Peter's Pedro. They all make sense. But I won't delve into that too much. But
you never said what yours was.
Mine is Quattro Nocero, which is
Quattro
really random.
Nocero. Okay.
And the reason for that is they were trying to think of a good one to do with Iain, and Forteath, which is Forteath is my surname. So Quattro Teeth is the idea. It's a bit of a laugh, but definitely it's not professed.
40.
Yeah. I wouldn't put Master Blender Quattro on the end of it. It's not really what I'm going for. So that kind of the fortified element.
An episode of Life on Mars. Fire up the Quattro.
You give me high strength whiskies and this comes out. But anyway, so but yeah, so we all started chatting about it, and then it was like, why don't we actually make this official rather than just like talking about it? So yeah, Make Sherry Cool Again became a bit of a laugh, and we've all kind of been. I think the brilliant thing about the industry, to kind of take a sidestep, I suppose, is that although we all work for competitive brands, we all love whiskey, and we all do it because I'd like to think no brands, maybe some do, but most brands aren't ignorant enough to think that their whiskey is the only whiskey everyone should have. One of the great things about whiskey is the variety of flavors and styles and characters out there. And as much as I would love if someone had a bottle of Glencairn and a bottle of Tom and Tell in their collection, if that's all they had, there's loads of other whiskeys to try as well. And I say my whiskey collection next door is over 100. That's not me bragging. It's an occupational hazard. Like I said, totally broke, tons of booze. And not everything that I own is made by Angus and Dundee, because I think that it's great, firstly, to see what else is out there. But I love lots of different whiskies for lots of different reasons. And so that's the reason we end up coming together, because everyone who works in distilling and works in the industry, we all have affinity for each other's whiskies. We all understand what each other are doing. And although we compete for sales on a shelf, we all appreciate what makes it taste the way it does and why each brand is different. So anyway, that kind of came together as a social element that got into talking about how great sherry is. We're all distilleries that use sherry, in terms of our maturing and kind of cask selection. So we kind of went out there. We went to visit different bodegas, establish relationships, and now some of them are really long-standing as well. But also try and kind of big up their products and tell people what's available on the other side of the pond. So it's become really good fun. And actually, I just saw Darren popped in a question saying, "What do I think of Malaga Dulce?" Which is Malaga wine. Yeah, effectively, Malaga wine is PX, but without the same finessing as PX. So you get that kind of prune juice and kind of rich style to it. I definitely don't turn my nose up to it. We actually got an offer of Malaga casks not that long ago, but I turned it down at the time because it wasn't really suitable for. I don't really know what was going to come out of it. But yeah, if you're looking for a kind of sweet wine that you can pour over some vanilla ice cream, nothing wrong with a good spot of Malaga wine as well. Obviously, there's lots of grades of it, and the entry level stuff's pretty rotten, but it's like Buckfast. But I mean, if you go up, not that you go up the scale of Buckfast, but if you go up the scale and into a well-made Malaga wine, there could be great, and it's the same grape variety that makes Pedro Jimenez PS.
Remember, we had the pub I had, we had the Cider and Perry Festival. So the Cider and Perry Festival we put on Buckfast as a fortified Perry.
All right.
I loved it.
I was just going to see. Have you seen the Charlie McLean videos? It's so swanky.
See, I don't know how to do that. It's when he's kind of looking around the glass. He's like, you see, it's got a nice kind of garnet hue, which means it's aging. And he's like, it's very plummy and I was amazed to see that he was in those adverts. I think they're brilliant in terms of irony, but I don't know how serious he is in them or not. But yeah, Eldora Do is great.
It's a great market.
LD, if you want to be
concise. LD, Eldora Do. I had a brilliant moment with Charles. We were filming, the Robert Fleming 30th releases that we did.
Yes.
So we had Charles talking to Robert about that. So we had him up at the distillery for a couple of days. And you've met Charles McLean? Have you met him?
I've met him. Well, you've met him. Well, Mike's met him in a bizarre place. We'll talk about your habit of marking barrels in a minute, and that's similar to Mike's story about Charlie. We did a Water of Life tasting, the guys. The sort of the videos, and so we got Charlie to do our question and answer, along with Ben Chambers from Glenalley, the two.
Yeah.
So yes, that was a great night as well. And there's another story from there that we maybe will keep till after live.
It's not really that bad. It's not really that bad. I have a habit of meeting whiskey legends.
Oh no, your one. I was saying the other story. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
All right.
So I was invited by Stephen from Gordon MacPhail to the Spirit of Speyside Festival 2016 because we'd kind of basically, as I mentioned before, we'd opened our shop with them. So we went, and it was, here was me about a year into a whiskey shop, and with all the great and good of the whiskey world, and it was a Glenmurray distillery. They cleared out the warehouse, had the dinner, and the toilet was a porter cabin across the. So I went to the toilet, and in the urinal, and here's Charlie McLean, who I'd only ever seen on the movie. So in my mind, I'm next to a movie star and a whiskey. And it's like, it was just kind of, hello, you do fine? Yeah, good night. Yeah, right. And I wanted to just shake his hand. I'm just like, it's kind of inappropriate to shake your hand. It's just like, wash the hand, and he'd gone by that point. So, got it.
You didn't turn to him at the urinal and say, "So do we shake?"
It was that kind of bizarre scenario. It was just like, wow, this is great. Can't really do anything here, but can you sign this?
He's a lovely guy. Again, as someone who's, I've read about 6 or 7 of his books, and I've always kind of looked up to him. And every time I met him, he's a very salt of the earth guy as well. He's not, for someone who's relatively well known in the industry, like he's very open and very kind of chatty and happy to kind of share his experience. But as I say, so we had him over, and so some great tasting notes, and kind of showed him some of these casts, and had some filming with Robert. 2 brilliant things that came of it, actually. And again, since it's a Blether, it's quite good. So firstly, you've had Robert, you've met Robert. Robert, again, salt of the earth, despite the fact he is like distilling royalty, salt of the earth. But first thing is we're doing a kind of a video with Charlie and Cigar Malt, and chatting away, and they were tasting through Tom and Tuss Cigar Malt. I hope you've tried Cigar Malt.
Yeah.
Another one of my babies, actually. But anyway, so chatting away about it, and at the end of the video, Charles was like, "Oh yeah, and Robert, like we're indoors, but hopefully next time we can meet up, we can have a cigar together with this dram." And Robert was like, "No, not me. I quit smoking 20 years ago. I wouldn't touch it. My life depended on it." And I was like, "No." He was just being open, but he's like, "What?" I'm like, if we're talking about cigar malt, like maybe don't tell people how much you don't want to smoke a cigar. It's an optional thing. So that was a brilliant Robert moment, but with Charles. But the moment of Charles that I loved was So obviously, as you know, he's quite kind of proper, very well dressed, has his monocle and everything else. And we talked about, I was like, "Oh, Charles, what time's your train?" So he was up at Tom and Tal, he was going to get a train from Abbeymoor. He's like, "Oh, my train's at 1:30, I'm pretty sure." I was like, "Okay, great." And so we'd arranged for a taxi to come and pick him up, so that he could get kind of dropped to the station and everything else. Gave it plenty of time, tried to get him picked up at 12:30, so he had time to get to Abbeymoor and get settled. And he was pulled out his sheet, and he was looking at it, and he's like, Ian, do me a favour. What time is my? Can you confirm the time of the train? And I was like, "Yeah, your train's at 11:30, Charlie." And he's like, 11:30 in the morning. I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "What time is it now?" And I was like, "About 12:20." And he had his monocle and looking at it, he was like, "Good gracious." Well, shot out of his eye, bounced off the page, and I was like, "This is literally the most quintessential Charlie McLean moment I think I could have had." It was so good. But luckily for this train, it was a movable ticket. But yeah, he was like, "Good gracious."
I suppose I should share our story because it's almost identical.
Yeah.
We had this. We'd set this whole thing up, and I was aware that Charlie was one of the panel on, and Charlie, he's called Charlie. So I'm thinking Charles McLean royalty. No, it's Charlie. Oh, goodness, okay. So anyway, we start the water live. Greg Schwartz is there from LA. The whole crew are there from Hollywood. They're all kind of on screen. We've got the thing going. No Charlie, you see, and I'm thinking. So Mike eventually texts me and said, "Do you want to give my phone?" And I don't know his number, so I messaged Greg. Greg, have you got Charlie's number? So he messaged me, "I've got a number." So I go off screen, mute, blah blah blah, phone him up. Hello. I said, "Hi, Charlie." Yes. And I could tell, very sleepy. So I'm thinking, it's Russell Brinkley from the Whisky Shop in Inverurie. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, we're meeting tonight, aren't we? I said, yeah, we are. He said, 10 o'clock. I said, well, no, it's 7 o'clock, Charlie. What time is it now? It's 7:15, Charlie. Oh, right, okay. It's absolutely fine, no problem. I'll just pop through. To if you give me a minute, I'll just pop through to the study, and I'll get myself a dram, and I'll be with you, no problem. So fine. I thought, God, okay, right, we've got him. So ends the call, comes back on the screen, messages me, got him, no problem. So chatting away. Yeah, Charlie will be with us shortly. Not arriving. So I phoned him back, and he's like, hey, wait, have we got a link? I said, I'll send you again. There is a link, So I sent him the link again, and I'm sure you can associate with this. So long story short, he appears on screen. I'm like, thank God he's here.
Meanwhile, kudos to Ben Chambers from Glenallachie, who was...
This is what we wanted. We desperately needed Charlie. So he's on screen, and he's got a dram in front of him. So Mike says straight away, I think it was even Greg. Greg had said, what have you got in front of you, Charlie? What's your dram? And he goes, I have absolutely no idea. I said, what is it I've got? And that's just absolutely perfect. That's absolutely what you wanted. Such a wonderful, wonderful guy. Just brilliant.
Yeah, he's brilliant. I think what I love about him is he's just him. There's kind of he's very much himself, and I think that I admire it. I say it's great. He's he's reached that age and that stage in the industry that he's like, do you know what, I'm going to do what I do.
Absolutely love it. And it's the way he just sparks up the cigarette. There's a bit of you when he does it, you're like, there's no. Well, wait a minute, Sean, how you can please yourself.
If that was me sitting there doing that, turning up 20 minutes late for anything, you'd be like, well, you're not getting invited back. Don't invite you again. But it's just like, we're clamoring for this guy because he's such a legend.
Absolutely. Yeah. Please come back. I love that. I've absolutely...
I have no idea.
I have absolutely no idea.
It was the Glen Scotia, wasn't it? The Glen Scotia.
It was the absolutely brilliant Glen Scotia 2021, the red wine,
nice.
which he then wanted to discuss. Hey, yes, it's wonderful. I had to contact them to get a second bottle because they gave me the first one, and I just hoovered it up. I hoovered it. It was gone in no time. Oh, God bless them. They give me a second bottle. They give me a second bottle. Of course they did, Charlie. You're Charlie McLean. Of course they did.
I'm conscious we're not going to talk about Charlie McLean, but we need to get Charlie on, and we'll do a blend with Charlie.
Yeah, you should.
Absolutely.
We will apologise for tonight.
I wouldn't say a bad word about him. He's extremely entertaining.
Never.
And he really knows his stuff. It's
but, I want to ask you.
You'd be disappointed if you didn't have those moments with him. If you didn't have that.
I'd always be like, nah, he's not really like that in real life. It's just a facade.
Absolutely.
Exactly how you want to be. Yeah.
I want to ask you, Ian, if you weren't in the whiskey industry, I think we've already answered that. You'd be in the sherry industry. If you weren't in the drinks industry, what would you find yourself doing? What's your other passion out with?
When I'm not drinking and talking about whiskey for a living. So aside from alcohol, as all you said, I didn't actually hear the end of it.
If you weren't in the drinks industry, what would you do? Apart from spying on ex-players.
Maybe halfway up the Amazon looking for indigenous species of it.
So I don't know what I'd do. I've got two really random trains of thought for what I would do if I wasn't in booze. If I wasn't in whiskey, I would like to start my own winery and live somewhere in France or Italy. But again, the whole not money thing doesn't really help that. But if it was nothing to do with booze at all, I quite fancy that even a paramedic, which is totally random. And if I ever was going for a dramatic career change, only having been on the receiving end of them a few times, I think they're completely undersung. And I think it's an amazing thing that you contribute. I think from someone who sets people up for them to repair. A bad joke, but no, I think that so my sister's a doctor, and I obviously I didn't get into medical school, but I think that a paramedic is a brilliant crossing in between, and I think that being the first line of defense, genuinely, without getting too somber, would be a job I'd fancy. The only problem is I'm a bit sensitive, and I think that I'd get too attached because those guys have to go through steel. Russell, I mean, I know that you're obviously very involved in on the medical side of things. Again, I generally tip my hat to you. Like, it's not a plug to be like kind of nodding to yourself. But I think if I was doing a change to be something completely different, the other flip side would either be doing something down like marine biology route or something geographical related. So yeah, so either kind of out and about doing something to do with renewables or kind of something ocean related, or marine biology was always an interest. I did totally random digression, but so I did environmental science and geography as my degree, and I got a lecturer in first year, a guy called Alan Jones. He's not alive anymore, unfortunately. But he was a marine biologist, and just all the stuff that he went off with. I've always been fascinated by the sea, and so from chatting with him, I was like, maybe I should have done that as a degree instead. But yeah, that's always been part of something that's kind of niggled as well. So if everything changed overnight and I had to kind of drop out and do something else, they would go totally two random tangents, but that's where I would edge towards. But yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole, your ability to, what's the word I'm looking for? Engage with people, would probably set you completely up in that kind of industry. But you're having had 40 years, you're far better off where you are.
I think
a word of warning: don't give this up to go back and to go into that.
I appreciate that. Yeah. No, I think it's a funny one, isn't it? Because again, like, there's still so much to learn and so much to do, and I'm still very much at the beginning of my position in this role, and to be given this responsibility. And I'm obviously a brand ambassador is still very much part of my job, and my title's both, so it's kind of global brand ambassador, master blender. I think with the size of company we do as well, it can make sense to have a bit of everything, and I really enjoy being a kind of advocate for the brand, but also for whiskey in general. And I do have to kind of pinch myself when I was saying about like the smells of warehouses and stuff. Like, the industry is amazing. So aside from that digression, I mean, the whiskey industry generally, partly being Scottish, I think it's one of these things that everyone knows the Scots for a few things. They know that we wear skirts and they know that we drink whiskey. Iron Brew might get wedged in there and swearing.
And we're shite at football, yeah.
We're shite at football, yeah, exactly, yeah. And don't even go there for any other sport apart from rugby. But otherwise, I think curling maybe. But I think that like everybody in the world knows what whiskey is, and I think that with my job and the travels I get to do, it's remarkable to see that you go to far-flung places now, everywhere from from Arizona to Manila, and everybody knows what Scotch whiskey is. Everybody knows where Scotland are, because really we're a pretty small country in the grand scale of things. See, I'll bring it back to geography, but like size and population, we're relatively insignificant on a global scale in terms of actual size of what we do. But actually, everybody knows what Scotland is. Which there's not every country in the world can say that, and people know what it is because of primarily whiskey. I know we have great fish and meat and things like that, but I mean, people don't know Scotland internationally for its langoustines. But people do know what whiskey is everywhere in the world. And I think being part of that kind of industry, whether it is working in retail or whether it is doing the brand ambassadorial route and or sales or marketing, and now I get to kind of create stuff that people literally drink and enjoy. Like, that's amazing, and I do have to kind of pinch myself for that. And the industry is such a cool industry to work in, that such a big variety of flavour, such a variety of jobs as well, and it is something that is very Scottish. Doesn't mean you have to be Scottish to work in it, but it's a nice kind of nod to the fact that I'm from here and this is what we do best. It's quite
we're obviously not going to get into politics here, but the thing about Scotland and the Scotch industry is it's very, very multinational. But the country is Scotland, so that makes sense. And the product is Scottish. But people who are in it are so digress and multinational, and actually bring so much to Scotch and actually promote it. Sometimes I think the non-Scots actually promote it probably better than the Scots.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think there's brilliant whiskies from around the world. But Scotch is such a big thing. Like, so in wine, for example, so you get brilliant wines from France, Spain, Chile, Australia, South Africa, you name it. There's lots of great wines from everywhere. And okay, you can only have one Champagne and one Bordeaux, but you can make Champagne styles and kind of Bordeaux styles from different places. And there's lots of different whiskies in the world, and there's a brilliant plethora of whiskies from from England, Japan, Taiwan, India, and obviously the whole American Irish scene as well, which are even bigger bubbles. But with the exception of, Scotch whiskey is Scotch whiskey. And I think that although all these other markets and things compete, it's still a massively significant thing for a very small place. Irish whiskey definitely has to get its due for that as well. I mean, Irish whiskey used to be even bigger than Scotch. It's kind of going that way again. two small countries that have an impact because everybody drinks their products, which is quite cool.
It's incredible to think, like you say, that we've got this industry. But when you look at people in the industry, we've met so many over not just in the shop, but doing these Blethers and talking face to face. Every one of them is just like, just sit back and it's a job. This is what I do. And when you look at, you've got people from America, Australia, Japan, kind of are drinking this whiskey and thinking, "Oh my God, these people are gods." And you speak to, I'm not going to put yourself in that bracket just yet. You're a little bit.
I'm happy to put you there, Ian. You're up there for me.
We had Billy Walker on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
These kind of guys who are, you just put their name on it and it'll sell. And you're sitting there talking. We're talking about.
We need to look back at that Billy Walker tasting, because I'm pretty sure Mike and I were talking posh just to make sure we were behaving, because it's like royalty. It was like we were a little bit kind of, I better not swear and I better be. We're just awestruck. We were both awestruck.
Yeah. I think that's.
But you're like, it's a job. It's a passion. It's a job, and everyone who's in it realizes how lucky they are to be in it.
Yeah.
I think it's a Scottish thing. I think that's what endears us very much to the international market. Is I'm not sure, but there's the extravagance. So Richard Carson loves to throw a whiskey about and everything, but I think that's what people realize about it. Is it's something that anyone can enjoy.
Yeah.
Whether it's a Johnny Walker Red Label or it's a 50-year-old Macallan or whatever.
Yeah.
What spectrum you're on, you can enjoy it. It's just so endearing and so kind of nice that you can do that.
100%. I think that
the world that can do that.
Yeah, and even like you said, the people that are the pinnacle of their career. So your Pattersons, Jim McEwen's, Billy Walker's, kind of there's so many, Rachel Barry, kind of Kirsten McLeod. These people kind of they chat to you as anyone else does, and I know that exists in other industries as well. But if you met like a professional footballer, for example, I very much doubt that they would have the one-to-one conversation with you. If you met, I'm trying to think of a name of player. I'm not really that into football, but like Lionel Messi or something like that. Like, I don't think he'd turn around and have a chat to you. You'd probably get a security guard pushing him out of the way.
You could have get him at a wee Blether. You could get him.
Yeah. And I think that's like, so okay, different industries, and obviously they're much richer than the situation we're in. But like, for example, if you drink Balvenie, you've seen David Stewart's name every time you picked up that bottle.
Yeah.
And if you meet him in the pub, which I remember doing, I met him in the Highlander Inn in Craigellachie, just started chatting away to him like he was my granddad. And it was bizarre because I'm like, I've drunk so many of your products over the years. You've pioneered whiskey to where it is. Bill Lumsden's a really good example of that as well. Actually, I met him in a bar in Edinburgh, and I've met him in a few tastings. And again, just this is before I worked in Angus and Dundee, but just chatting away, like talking about places, having
That's an interesting question. So, do you think these guys want to talk whiskey, or do you think they want to talk about their passion, or football, or geography, or bird watching, or fishing, or?
Good point.
I used to meet people as a psychiatric nurse. You used to go out with groups of people in the pub, and you would meet up with people who you didn't know but were friends of whoever you're with. And so, this is my mate Russell. He's a psychiatric nurse, and they go, "Oh my God, you're not going to analyse me, are you?" And I'm thinking, "No, I'm on a night out. I'm not going. Why would I do that? I'm here to get pitched. People say that all the time,
A couple of weeks ago, Russell, we had Billy Walker. Yeah. And the 10 minutes before we went live, all we spoke about was the football.
Yeah.
And he's probably thinking, "Oh, I could sit and talk about this all day."
Yeah.
And then whiskey, and he's like, "Oh, for God's sake."
Let's talk about the rugby.
But it's fun. I think that so whiskey is a lifestyle though as well. I'm not saying that that's like I don't wake up in the morning and kind of rinse my mouth out with a dram, but like it's a lifestyle in terms of, I think that you don't just switch off from whiskey if you're really into it for the right reasons. I think people don't join the industry to make big bucks necessarily. It's not that you do it to be like a high flyer I know
that's certainly not my story. I mean, you've seen my boss. I mean, that's.
Yeah, it's like you plug your thing for a raise right now if you want to. I mean,
do you think I took my waistcoat off because it was hot? I had to sell it so I could get
throw it in the fire to keep the heat up. Yeah.
That was the bailiff. Just handed it through the window.
But it's true though. I think that kind of it's obviously a very successful industry, and there are pinnacle brands which is very much about the kind of high flying lifestyle and all that kind of element to it. But people that do it because they love it. And again, like I love whiskey for being whiskey. I get to work with it every day. I do have to pinch myself sometimes. I love what I do. I love tasting whiskey. I never sit down and go, oh god, I've got to try another bunch of casks today. That may happen in the future. I don't really know. But
that'll never happen.
Then when I meet friends and I meet kind of colleagues and or I'm down a pub, I look at the first thing I do when I walk into a bar is I look at what whiskies they have on the back shelf. Whether I'm in there for work or whether I'm just in for a pint, I'll always
Do you judge?
Sometimes. I was the guys here before me, but no, I definitely. But even if I like chatting to whiskey people or people around at the house or whatever, I always end up talking about whiskey or pouring them a whiskey anyway. Maybe I need more hobbies, but it is something that I think it is very much a lifestyle. When you do it all the time
or something, it comes out and being who you are, and I know being on the scale at what we are, people ask you, you know, if I'm sitting in a bar in Inverurie, say, and people recognise you, and they're like, oh, what would you recommend? What do you write? And it's very rare, obviously, the last year and a half, very rarely you're in a pub.
Yeah.
So, I was going to ask you, do you ever get kind of writer's block? Would be the best time when you go to work and you're just like, there's just nothing there. You're just like, I just can't get your nose in it, and it's just not there.
Definitely for tasting notes, sometimes you can go a bit numb and it can be a bit difficult to pick things up. So quality analysis is difficult, but it's not as difficult because effectively if I'm doing like a quality check on 30 casks, what I'm looking for is similarities and differences. So I don't need to write down all the minutiae of detail of what it tastes like. I just have to be like, okay, this one's sweeter than the standard, this one's bitter, this one's got a kind of vegetal note that one didn't have, and kind of working it that way. And then for tasting notes, you totally get writer's block regularly. And I've been doing a big project for one of our customers in the Far East and doing a lot of single casks with them recently. And it was about 60 different tasting notes. And there's only so many you can do in a day. Firstly, from nose burner, you kind of palate fatigue is a real thing. And I always try to do my tasting notes and the strength that they're being bottled at because it's representative of how they're being consumed potentially. I'll always dilute it with water afterwards to kind of see where it changes in and add any extra bits. But I'll always try it neat, and you can't try 20 cask strength whiskies in a row and write unique notes. Eventually, it just tastes like blood. I'm joking about that, but eventually, it kind of you burn out your tongue. But yeah, sometimes there's stuff that I'll smell it and I'll be like, I can write down typical things, but then it's like, actually, I don't really know. I'm not drilling down to it. I'm like, oh, it's kind of floral and it's fruity, but I'm like, what fruits? And I'm kind of like, I don't actually know today. Like sometimes you just you go a bit palate blind. But yeah, I think a big thing about it is tasting all regularly though. The more you try stuff, even if you try and have nose a few whiskies every day, your palate and your muscle memory and things like that build up to a better standard. But if I've had a week off, for example, a lot of it's catching up to try and then balance back out to see, bring the nose back up to standard.
I was busy just speaking to David on the chat there, so I kind of missed a little bit, and I'm hoping I'm not repeating the question. So, but Billy Walker used to say that the optimum time for tasting is about 10 in the morning.
Yeah, so your palate is freshest and most alive at between kind of 10 and 11.
Do you try and do that as well? Then do you try and kind of?
Yeah, I do. The only problem with it is functioning. So it depends. So yeah, the idea is you've not kind of exposed it to lots of other things and flavors and tastes and even just kind of general kind of.
Do you find you have to spit a lot? I mean, that sounds like sacrilege, but I mean, if you're tasting 60 samples, it sounds like survival.
Definitely. So again, if it's kind of quality analysis, you tend to either just nose them or you tend to spit straight away. And it's something again. So tasting notes are different because tasting notes is like a final stage of a product. So tasting notes, I'll usually swallow it because I want to. Again, it's hard to define a finish if you don't swallow. And I remember seeing a tasting with the kind of infamous Jim Murray, and he was talking about tasting notes and swallowing and spitting and all this kind of stuff, and it was kind of his way of tasting. And he was saying, yeah, you don't swallow it to begin with, you spit it out. And I'm like, well, you can't really evaluate a finish unless you swallow it, because you don't know if it's going to be like, if it's going to feel kind of syrupy and kind of thick, or if it's going to be light and just sit in your mouth. It's kind of hard to tell without swallowing a dram. So yeah, so if it's for a final tasting note, I'll swallow it. But obviously that has its own implications, because if you need to do things later on in the day, I'm not going to start drinking whiskey at 10 in the morning.
The only thing you need to do later in the day, then sleep, basically.
Yeah, exactly. There's little tips for palate resets, though. So if you're tasting lots of things, and tips that I'll share with you for tastings, especially if you're doing like a festival, it's funnily enough, not plugging sherry again, but dry sherry is amazing as a palate reset. So if you take 20 or 30 whiskies at a festival, and you have a glass of dry sherry
with you. Okay.
Yeah, just so the two best things for palate resets are dry sherry or champagne. Which again is an expensive way to do it, and obviously a good side of caviar. No, but what you need? I
was sitting in the Riviera on the yacht, and
a large tin of caviar, some foie gras, and some champagne. So dry sherry and champagne style wine. So not prosecco, but something that's been secondary fermented in bottle. Effectively, is really good for cleaning your palate and starting again.
So I've got a question for you then. Talking about caviar and monocles and all that kind of stuff. And books. Are you going to write? Do you want to write a book?
I don't know. I think it's early in the days for me. Something I keep meaning. So I'm not very good at writing things down. I like to write things down to learn, but I don't really write down my own things. And I've even found that. So my job has been really saturated, and I've travelled to some amazing places and had some ridiculous experiences in the 6 years I've worked for Angus and Dundee. And I keep meaning to write it down as a journal, because I'm going to forget. And some of the stuff I've seen and been through and kind of witnessed and stuff has been amazing. But like, so we were talking about riots randomly ages ago, something about London riots and someone's experience in London. And I was like, I was in Hong Kong during the Hong Kong riots. That was bloody mental. But it was like, I was chatting about it, and I was like, oh yeah, but we're in Paris for that. And I was like, wait a second, I was in Hong Kong that long ago when it was all kicking off. And like these things, I'll forget them if I don't write them down. So I keep meaning to write down my experiences generally, because being a brand ambassador, you see some weird and wonderful sights. But in terms of actual whiskey and whiskey journey, I suppose there's so many books that it's kind of done to death. So I'd never say never, but at the same time, I don't know what I'd write that would be new.
Could you see yourself? We look at David Stewart, for example, who has been a whiskey distiller, blender icon for so long.
Yeah,
you are currently amongst the top 2 youngest. If you were to be, you'd be. I'm guessing you're what, mid-30s?
Early, 31. I'm coming on 32.
I can't even remember that. I can't. But you talk
older than me, so you're not that yet.
But you talk about. I think the thing is, I think the difficulty with sometimes when you're young, you sometimes feel you don't have enough to say, but. It's about what you've seen and what you've done. There's a guy called Geraint Thomas, who you might have heard of, cyclist, Welsh guy.
Yeah.
He's e-books now, and he must be a similar kind of age, or possibly slightly younger. And he's written, his first book was called Cycling According to G, because he's called G. So the second one was the Yellow Jersey According to G, because he won the Tour de France. And the third one is Climbing According to G. So it's a kind of just a book about hill climbs. But the first one was just Cycling According to G, and it was just his experience of learning to ride, learning to race, and it was things like, as a cyclist, I don't know what your experience of cycling is, but one of the things that happens sometimes is you will run out of energy at the most inconvenient place, usually about 40 miles from home, and you want to lie down in the grass, but you can't. You've got to go, so you've got to find things to eat. You've got to get a garage that'll sell Mars bars or whatever, and he talks about that. The whole, they call it the block, or hitting the wall, and he describes chocolate bars in their usefulness or not usefulness. So things that are currently worry, that's a waste of time. A Twix, it doesn't. So, but it's that kind of detailed the story that kind of connects with people. So it doesn't matter how old you are. If you've got stories to tell that will connect with other people, people will actually they'll see that and read it. So I think that some of the things that you've probably seen, especially if you've been involved in riots and had to get transfers and all that kind of stuff, people would probably find very interesting, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I worry that my book would just be really sarcastic and really just full of swearing.
That sounds absolutely fine.
Yeah, that's like some people would want to wear, and somebody would relate to. But I mean, going back to before I was really interrupted by the cyclist here who shaves his legs to get on a bike.
Used to.
Back to previous conversation.
That's another story.
Do you see yourself going the full David Stewart and still being a master blender in 50 years' time?
I think I'd like to. Like I said, I think I with the title that I've got, all I can aim to do is to kind of justify the title for those that have kind of gone before me. There's not that many master blenders in the industry. I suppose is it Kelsey McKechnie is the understudy of is it I always get her name wrong. I think it's Kelsey. But I mean, obviously she's very young and she's stepping in she's going to step up to take over from David. In that time, it's funny because Angus and Dundee, we've never had like an established master blender as such. So Lauren McKillop did a lot of stuff. He's a master of wine who looked after a lot. Robert obviously has his input and has been creating whiskey for the company for quite a while. But to then establish this as a role for me, yeah, I think that as soon as I got the title, I was like, oh wow, amazing. But then I'm like, whoa, there's a lot to build into that, because although they give me responsibility to make whiskey, if I make it bad, I'll soon tarnish my name. So I need to try and do something to make sure it stays where it is. And yeah, I think, I mean, long term, I mean, I've kind of, it's a weird one. I don't mean it in a bragging way, but I've kind of done what I want. I've reached the point that I want to reach in whiskey, and all I want to do now is show what I can do. So I've kind of been nudging my way up the kind of ladder to be like, this is what I want to do in whiskey, and this is what I'm good at. And now it's a case of them being like, okay, well, there you go, prove it. So yeah, I suppose that only time will tell. But hopefully, in 30 years' time, we'll be having this chat, and I could be like, yeah, so people talk about me and Richard Patterson now.
And hopefully, we're still just talking the shit and not actually worried about what oh my God, we better watch what we say because Ian's.
For me, generally, I think that coming from wine and whiskey, there's a lot of snobbery in both, particularly wine. There's lots of brilliant people in the wine industry, but with anything that's luxury, there comes associated snobbery. And anyone who thinks they know better than somebody else, it can be transmuted in two ways. You can either use it educationally and be like, oh, if you don't know about this, this is what that is, this is what this is.
So are we okay to say I knew Iain Forteath before he was a snob?
Right, before he was wearing the red corduroy. I mean, even for myself. So as a relatively young guy in the industry I was in, I remember going into I won't name and shame, but I went into a pretty well respected wine shop in Edinburgh. And when I was younger, my hair's become more quiffy as it's become older and less able to stay up.
The monocle's next. Come on, the monocle's next.
So I was a young guy with a beard and spiky hair, which didn't really fit the norm in the wine industry, but I knew my stuff. But I remember going into a well-known wine shop in Edinburgh, and the guy spoke to me like I knew nothing, and was really condescending and effectively like, who are you buying this for? What are you interested in that for? For someone like you probably want this. And I was like, this is bizarre. But again, like, it was interesting from my perspective because I probably knew as much as him, if not more. But it was one of these scenarios that I'm like, that I would never want to imply that on somebody. So when people do tastings with me, I always start from the ground up. And I assume that they don't know anything rather than be like, oh, well, if you don't know this, then boo. It's always better to build up. And something I always say when any tasting environment is like, always ask questions you have, because kind of I get paid to do this, so if I don't know it, I'm not doing my job right. But at the same time, kind of like, if you don't know it, it's okay. It means you have a life. But if people are in a tasting and they've always wondered about what this terminology means or how this process happens or whatever it is, like, I'd rather people ask me, because I'm not going to be like, I can't believe you don't know that. I'd rather kind of share that information, because whiskey is all about sharing, whether that's kind of knowledge, passion, etc., etc. So I would like to think that I will never become that person. I think whiskey is very inclusive. I think that the only thing that divides people in whiskey is their budget, and that should never be a factor. If you drink malts at 30 quid or you drink malts at $3,000, you're lucky if you're on the other scale, but it doesn't mean that you're more into whiskey or less than somebody else. It's all dependent on what you can kind of be part of. And again, I think that's the great thing. That there's
a point where spending that amount of money in a malt is a status thing rather than a tasting, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, that's a very elaborate. £300 is probably a more realistic kind of comparative, because you can taste the difference to a degree, but there's great malts at all levels. So yeah, I'd like to think I'll never get to the stage that I'd look down at anybody. I think that for me, I've really enjoyed what I've done in the industry so far. I don't see myself leaving it. But if I can spread that enthusiasm and get other people to join it as well, because there's space for people in the industry. Like it's kind of, so I joined I'm not from a whiskey distilling region, which is either the two ways that people tend to end up in the industry is they do IBD, or they work down the brewing and distilling side of things, or they are born in a whiskey area like Islay or Speyside, and that's kind of what you fall into because your dad did it, or because you know people that are in it. I didn't do either of those. I just got into wine and whiskey, and then kind of started selling it, and then built up my knowledge like you guys do. I think it's, and again, that's not me saying that I progressed further than you, because it's totally different. It's not that at all. Like, well, you know, back when I worked in retail.
My psychotic evaluation is you're a good guy, Ian, so that's fine. You're okay. That's
Thank you. But no, it's,
hey guys, there won't be any.
Oh, there's a disaster. There's a death. There's a death.
There won't be
There's a death in the family. Oh no.
So,
I think the great thing with the whiskey industry is it's all inclusive. Everybody's really friendly. I suppose we're all aware of one or two people who probably have become a bit kind of prima donna-ish, but the majority of people, and the good and the mighty, your Billy Walkers, your Jim McEwens, are just lovely. Dave Stewart's, wonderful people who, I mean, I guess they deserve the respect because for two things. We're all younger than them, so we owe them respect from an age point of view. Absolutely, that's the way humankind should be. So they've learned a bit more in life. They've worked hard to get to where they are, so we should be respectful of them. And they've got a huge amount of knowledge. But the bottom line is, if we got them in the pub, a few drams, we'd be speaking fitba, fishing, whatever. And that's the wonderful thing about it. But there are, as we know, there are one or two in the industry that are a little bit. But hey, the rest of us aren't like that. The majority are like us, just shooting breeze and having fun.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, so I love when I go to tasting and someone turns around and says, or if you're in a bar or something and someone says, try this. And I'm like, oh, what's this? I've not tried it before. And it doesn't have to be something big and fancy. It's just to be like, oh, here's a whiskey you might not have tried. And when I do tastings and stuff, one of the first things I ask a group that I've got in is, oh, is there anything I should be tasting that I've not had? Because again, I suppose with the world kind of closing in a bit for COVID, I don't get to try all the competitor stuff. I don't taste it to be like, oh, what are they doing? I'm going to get in amongst that and I'm going to copy that idea. It's mainly to be like, oh, cool, what flavors are out there?
So I'm going to get a bottle of that in the garden later on with the fire on you.
Absolutely. So
just jumping back, Russell, I think from my experience, a lot of that snobbery, kind of uppity kind of attitude comes more from people who are attached to the industry rather than in the industry. Mm-hmm. The guys who make it, who are the coopers or the distillers or the stillmen or the all these kind of guys are very much down to earth. This is a day-to-day job. It's the guys who make a living off the back of that, just in general experience. Not everyone. But. Well,
I think even in your situation, kind of, you know the difference between someone who's a salesman and someone who sells whiskey. And not every company, and again, I don't blame them because some people just are good sellers and they want to go and sell whiskey. But like, so we're talking about people like Paul Dempsey. I've known him for years, and he's a guy that you cut and he bleeds whiskey. And I say,
I can't wait to go in the piss with Paul. I mean, I just can't wait.
He's great.
He came into the shop recently, and I was like, we can't go to the pub. I was like, I really want to go to the piss.
Paul, I don't know if you're still watching, but see when everyone's the same height on Zoom. This guy is a giant.
But I think that's the thing. So you get, and it was the same in the wine industry as well. You saw people who did it because they were in sales, and people who did it for the job. And as kind of in your situation, when you guys are in the shop, you can tell the difference between them. It doesn't mean you won't buy a product from the guy that's not necessarily into it, but you might not have a Blether with him for so long, or her. I don't feel that. I said him as a kind of I wasn't being objective.
Indeed, absolutely,
but so there's good salespeople and bad salespeople, and there's people that do it because they love it, and there's people that do it because it's a job. And I would very much count myself in the former. I work in whiskey because I love whiskey. Yes, it provides a roof over my head and allows me to live a nice lifestyle. Aside from all the alcohol, but it's something that I wouldn't do it. If I was selling linoleum, for example, I wouldn't get the same kick out of it. Maybe there's lots of things about linoleum, that's very presumptive. But if I was like, check out this carpet, it's got a different weave and it's got this, I don't think I'd be quite as into my job in the same basis. My house might be kitted out really nicely, but it's one of these things that, I think that you feed off the passion of other people and it's all about product. And although So I will be really excited to show you guys these new Glencadams I'm working on, for example. But I'm not going to go on and be like, right, clear the fucking shelves, get all my stuff in.
I'm okay with that. We've got a shelf. We've already got a shelf of Glencadam. I'm quite cool to clear it.
Nice. Well, I need to come see it. But I would be like, this is good, and this is why it tastes the way it does. I wouldn't be like, yeah, remove everybody else and make it a Glencadam shop. It's not really the thing. And again, if I meet someone else from another company, I'll probably know them pretty well, and we always have a good Blether. One of my favorite tastings, actually, I mentioned them earlier, but one of my favorite tastings in lockdown so far was it was Angus and Dundee versus Distell, which is good fun. So Scott, who I know quite well, it was me and him on screen, and it was funny because we were so it's 4 drams from them, 4 drams from us. And afterwards, it was just catching up, and he's like, "Oh, they're great. I've not tried that one." I was like, "Oh, I've not tried that from you. I think it was good, really good to taste." And if anything was a good kind of snapshot of the industry, it was that, because at the end of it, we ended up doing a bit of a dram swap, and I sent him a few things. He sent me a few things to try, because I was like, "Oh, I wasn't in touch with what you've been doing on that stuff." And yeah, it's kind of, that's part of the fun of it, and that interest both ways of saying, "Oh, if you like that, you'll love this." It doesn't mean you have to be like, "Oh yeah." Well,
do you find yourself able to do that? Even you're at a stand, you're at a festival, you're selling Glencadam, and then people come along, "This is great," and you're going, "Yeah, if you really enjoy that, my mate down there sells tomato, you should really go and try his stuff." Do you find yourself doing that as well? Yeah. So you feel happy enough and able to do that. You've got the freedom to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, obviously, kind of talking about our products is the main aim of the game. But I think that the kind of whiskey is inclusive enough that you should be able to recommend other things. And like I said, one of the things I do at tastings and festivals particularly is go and see what everyone else is doing. And it's reciprocated. It's like, "Oh, you should try those guys. They're really cool." And without a doubt, when you get speaking to people who are kind of whiskey geeks, who are there because they really like whiskey, not that they just want to sesh, which is fine if you just want to sesh as well. I should state that that's okay too. But
yes,
people are there because they really want to try lots of whiskey. Kind of
okay with the sesh, boys.
Like, "Oh, what have you tried? What's really good?" Then obviously I'll be like, "Oh, try these that we do." And I'm like, if you're looking for something else to try, like, check out Andy over there. They've got some really cool stuff at the Iron Stand. Check out Scott with Tomatin. Kind of check out whoever's around. I'm not just picking them because they're my friends, but like generally, if there's cool stuff that I've tried, then I'll quite happily recommend it because I'll be interested in trying it too. And the same thing goes if I have someone at a stand, I'll be like, "What have you tried that's really good? Like, what's your standout so far?" And I'll go and kind of see what they've been tasting because again, that's part of the fun of it all. And yeah, as I said, I think the best testament to that is my whiskey collection is full of lots of different drams. One of the fun things, I suppose, about Angus and Dundee, I know we've breached the 2-hour mark. I'm sorry if I'm just blethering.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. You've got a record. You've got a record to beat. You've got confident you beat it. So
yeah. 6 hours later.
I'm going to pour the next one. We're fine. I'm not in the shop till 10 o'clock tomorrow. We're fine.
But what was I saying? So one of the great. What was I talking about? Totally lost my train of thought.
Other
had other whiskies in it.
Oh yeah. So I was talking about the element of the fact that there's loads of different products in my range or whatever else. And one of the cool things in Angus and Dundee is that they spent kind of 70 years building up their company. So they only bought Tomintoul in the year 2000. They bought Glencadam in 2003. Prior to that, there are decades and decades of them buying, trading, and blending stock. So for the whiskey geek in me, I get to play with 2 brands that I love, but also our warehouse is full of casks from pretty much every distillery you can name. And from time to time, we do checks on these. We're doing regauges, or we're doing single casks that we're selling to various customers. We're putting through the McKillop's Choice range. So I'll spend 4 days of my week looking at new Tomintoul releases, and then on the 5th day, I'll end up tasting a bunch of stuff that's like, "Oh, here's the long one from the 1980s and a Mortlake from the 1990s."
That's like having a Panini sticker book and just like going along and looking at Pelly. And
hey, well, you'd say, "Oh, cool."
That's ridiculous.
And I think it's very hard if we get something new in the shop that we are passionate about, and Glencadam, obviously for Russell, for me for a long time is Glendronach, and then you have somebody like Glenallachie coming up. It's very hard to not sell that, and you have to remember that there's so many other whiskies in the shop or available to anyone, and you're like, if we go through space where Glenallachie will just say like, or Tomintoul will go, or Glengarry, whatever it is, because you've been to an event and you're Tomatin being another one. You know, you've been in an event or you've done some training on it, or there's a new release, and you just buy into it, and you're like, everyone's just got to buy. You've just got to try this, and you just go through tons and tons of that bottle, and then you realise you're like, oh, there's a big gap in that shelf, but everything else is fully like, you know, it's hard. You have to come back and say, right, okay, what else is like that I could recommend that people would like?
Yeah. But again, that's the faith in your customers and them knowing that you know what you're talking about. And I miss that.
Sometimes it's a bit weird. I had somebody come into the shop today, and they were looking for a lovely whiskey to go into a quaich. There's been a handful of people in the shop recently. They've got a wedding on Saturday, and it's going to be the hottest weddings on the planet.
Yeah,
wonderful. And I was congratulating them all. But this lassie came in, want a bottle. We're going to share it in the quaich. We've got it for them, and I'm not going to say the distillery, but Michael know which one that it ended up being. But I went around a few different, including yourselves, for all sorts of reasons, of lovely looking bottles and all sorts. And I just fell back. I almost felt disappointed that I sold this one, because I thought, I can't stop selling this stuff. I want to sell something else. It's like, why have you chosen? If I pushed you to that one, why have you chosen that? Is it just that it's a nice box, or? There's that thing about there are definitely distilleries that you sometimes feel you need to promote more because you're not. And before I finish this point, it was one I meant to mention earlier on about that whole thing about having favourites. I would say I've probably got about 5 distilleries that I love everything they do, and it's about your collection. So there would be 5 distilleries I would always go to, just grab a bottle because I love it. Doesn't matter what they do, I'll take it. It's fine. But other ones, I'll pick a single bottle here and there, or an independent bottling or something a little special. There's Ali on tonight who was stuck offshore. I'm looking for something different. You've got the same fruit flavour profile as me. So I just picked up the Carnmore Glenlossie. Yeah. Chewits in a glass. I said, there you go. He said, what's it like? I said, it's Chewits in a glass. He went, well, okay, I've never seen it before. I like the idea of a Glenlossie, and I know we've got the same flavour profile, so yeah, I'll buy it. And then I got a post later. This is brilliant, and that's the kind of thing I love. So from a selling point of view, sometimes you find yourself kind of stuck to what you like, and it's really hard to push that out, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the great thing with having a shop like yourselves, though. People, and I think that's the interesting thing jumping out of that as well, is the difference between going in and supporting a whiskey specialist from buying it online, for example, even from yourselves. Obviously, there'll be recommendations, but it's very, very hard to replace that one-to-one service. But people that know you will know that you have a taste in whiskey. They'll probably, if they know you well enough, they'll know the kind of stuff you'd like as well. Yeah. So if someone comes in and says, they have the confidence to be like, what's good? They know that you're not going to give them a bum steer.
Yeah.
It's made easier almost if someone comes in and says, right, I'm wanting something kind of peaty and smoky and it's got a bit of kind of saltiness to it. And you go, cool, right, that pigeons me to these whiskies.
There we go, yeah.
Give me a jam. And you go, okay, what do you like? And like, you pick one, or you kind of recommend some. And then the thing is, you'll always talk more fondly of the ones that you love because it's just natural. And I think like wine was exactly the same as that. We'd kind of, I'd buy a bottle of something, love it or hate it, and if I loved it, then without a doubt I'd end up selling loads of it the next couple of days, a couple of weeks, because people will be like, "What's good?" I'm like, "Well, I was drinking this, and it was awesome, and it tastes great because of this." Yeah. And all of a sudden, they're like, "Yeah, do you know what? That'll do." Because some people just want to be given it, and yeah, if you have favorite drams and favorite whiskies, it is quite easy to just revolve in that circle and be like, "Well, do you know what? You should try this because it's lovely."
It's funny how you say that, because there was an Aberdeen football player that came into the shop, and I recognised him even through his mask.
Yeah.
I won't say who he is. And I was like, I'm not gonna go down that. Oh, you're I'm just gonna treat you as a customer. But he was like, he bought one. He was looking for a couple of bottles of wine. He picked one up. He said, "Was there anything else I should try?" And I love the Lebanese wine. I love it. I absolutely adore Lebanese wine. I said, that's a fantastic wine there. It's only £15 a bottle. Yeah. Bargain. Yeah. Fantastic. Oh, well, as soon as you've said that's great, I'll buy it. Yeah. But I'm now thinking, this is great. I've actually given a wine to an Aberdeen football player.
Yeah.
Is that going to be like, he's in the dressing room at Pataudry now going, there's a boy out at Inverurie. He's still go out and get this wine. It's fantastic.
But no,
or maybe not. Don't go near that shop. That wine.
Like, you know what? I went in, I got something I liked because I knew it, and then he gave me this stuff.
It's absolutely right. He's a guy there with a beard poking out the end of his.
He's in the dressing room saying, "Does anyone want a bottle of wine? Anyone?"
Yeah.
Andy constantly going, "Yes, sir. I can do it."
But no, it's definitely part of the fun. And like you said about making there's always little gaps in the ones that have your own favourites. And that is part of the joy of it, really. And again, kind of without that, if that would be the difference between you working in like a spa and they'll be like, "What whiskey do you like?" That's the whiskey section.
That's an offer. I'll be totally sure
I got pitched on that last week. Was that right?
Yeah, it was fine. Or actually working in a shop where you choose the product that you want to supply and you talk about the stuff you've got. And yeah, that's kind of what makes it special.
I think and we're lucky that there's so much growth in kind of the independent whiskey shops in the area. And I've always championed that Aberdeenshire should be a region in its own. You know, there were so many great whiskies. Yeah. And now the fact we've got some more whiskey shops in the region, I think it's a lot of people might be upset by the competition. I'm thinking it's great because more people will come to the area. We've got great distilleries, and kind of Brechin is just on the cusp of Aberdeenshire. On the side, so we could promote that as well. So. And,
Posey wants to say hello to everybody.
Posey's here. Hello. But guys, Iain, you broke the record. That's 2.25 hours. I'm getting daggers from the wife now, and the dogs need out. I'm sure the idea of this is to give everyone an insight. Not a biography.
Exactly. You say that for the book. I'm joking.
But
absolutely.
And it's been absolutely phenomenal. It's been an absolute blast.
It's been a pleasure to join you guys.
I just feel there's so much more we could talk about. So
we can do the second one. It's fine.
We'll
yes,
get you
absolutely.
Back.
Well, you're not the first
we'll put on the Tom and Towel
absolutely
hat because we've talked a lot of Glen Cadden.
Yeah, we can do the Tom and Towel.
So we'll do a Tom and Towel hat on. We'll do the next one.
Well, I'll have to come back anytime. And again, thank you to everybody in the comments. I know I've not had a chance to kind of keep in touch, but I hope I'll get a chance to meet some of these guys as well. And Ross, thanks for everything you're doing. I see you posted about the discount codes. I mean, again, when we're talking about being Scottish, never turn down a discount code if you can find one.
Ross was going to bed at 8:30, and he said I bet he's regretting putting that comment on. He's going to put the discount code up when we finish the chat. He's like, "Come on, guys, go to bed." Absolute pleasure to have you in.
Thank you for having me.
I'll definitely ask you back very soon. We'll maybe do a Blether when we get the bottles in the shop, and we'll do a wee tasting together.
Certainly.
Iain, as far as I'm concerned, there's old legends and there's young legends, and the old legends are people like your Franz Beckenbauers and all these kind of people. Your young legends are Billy Gilmore's, and you're definitely in the Billy Gilmore status.
He's twice the age of Billy Gilmore. Come on.
but I'm talking about here we go, the future. We're looking for future legends, because people like Jim's retiring, and what have you. So, yeah.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. I'll try not to let you guys down. But,
the industry is in good hands. It's in good hands.
I'll be sure to keep you in touch with any new bits and pieces I come up with as well. So, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Please do. Thanks, guys, for one, for tuning in, two, for sticking around. I just want to go back just quickly to Phil Dixon's. He put on his first time tasting the 15-year-old, creamy vanilla, sweet green apples, wee hint of spice, some nutmeg. I think he sums it up.
I would go
pretty much nailed it there.
Absolutely. Phil, I was going to ask if you were reading them off the back of the bottle, because I'm pretty sure I talk about green apples before and hence the nutmeg. That's a great tasting.
Empty.
We'll bypass it.
Yeah.
Good night, guys. Thank you very much for sticking around. And next week, we're almost ready to confirm our guest. We've got a fantastic lineup for August. Just a wee blip in next week. We're waiting to hear who's going to join us. It might just be me and Russell.
It may well just be us, yeah. We've got Alistair Walker on the 12th of August.
Yeah.
Infrequent flyers. So that'll be another great night.
Nice.
yeah, no, this is fantastic. So yeah,
great guys.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Cool.
Good night.